Yo, can we say best set ever? Spoilers for the rest of this video, but y'all did a really good job of giving me some hella good songs to review. Thank you so much. Not gonna waste any more time here, so quick explanation for any new peeps. In this video, I am ranking and reviewing 100 songs given to me by my viewers. 10 were given to me by my $15 patrons, 15 more I handpicked myself, and the remaining 75 were voted in thanks to you guys. It's gonna be a fun time, as it always is. Anyway, 7 times the charm, so let's dig right into the stinkiest, grimiest, worst song of this entire bunch. Actually, wait, there is no nightmare tear. I just wanted an excuse to show off the snake. Look at this precious guy. I love it so much. Anyway, let's march right along. Time's a-wastin'. Right off the bat, I gotta admit, I had a bit of a tough time figuring out which song would go in the number 100 spot, mostly because there were no super obvious picks like last few times. However, well, there was one particular song I simply found myself enjoying less and less as time went on. Each listen gave me something new to dislike about it, in fact. I would have never thought it'd be this song in particular, but, well, these things are funny sometimes. First of all, this straight up sounds like a Christian rock song. Like, it has that particular feel and cadence I'd expect from the genre. That chorus especially. Is that he with the capital H? But I mean, that's not the reason to put this song at number 100 on this list. I don't like Christian rock, but I'm not going to be that dramatic about it either. It mostly just sounds like any other run-of-the-mill adult alternative flooding the 90s airwaves, and it's just as bland and devoid of charisma as so many of those were, yeah. The song speaks of a woman who is unlucky in love, who has tried and failed to find that particular person who can make her feel complete. It's not an uncommon topic for a song, but it does annoy me that it is told in the second-person perspective, from the viewpoint of some random guy who knows this woman, who is witnessing her heartbreak from the sidelines and speaking back her own feelings toward her. And I'm not sure I'm feeling much empathy on his side of things. It's more judgment. A restating of the situation she's already well aware of, putting her real feelings into his own words, with the weight of whatever assumptions come from this, and without any real conclusion or even advice toward his friend. By the way, I lied about that last part, because he does give her some advice. This is where it lost me. Yep, it's another one of those "you don't need him, you need me, you stupid woman" songs. It's treat you better, but with more flowery poetry to make it more palatable on the face of it. And yeah, it's really only that final chorus that kills it, but man is that one huge nail in the coffin, turning the subtext into plain text and making the whole predicament more than a little gross as a result. I guess I was correct in my Christian rock presumptions this whole time, because man is this preachy as hell, and I'm not about it. On the whole, this group seems pretty fascinating, one who melds our traditional Moldovan folk music with elements of punk and hard rock. DJ Vasile, however, also seems to take on some electronic and hip-hop approaches to their style, which feel incredibly dated in ways I don't enjoy, with the more interesting folk elements of their sound watered down and compromised to this hybrid style. Moreover, I don't really know who this DJ Vasile is, and the mass repetition of their singular hook doesn't give me much to chew on either. I just don't know what to get from this, really. It's a style that seems mildly intriguing on the surface, but I've never really crossed over into genuinely enjoying the thing, even all these listens later. Sorry. Y'all really like these Marianas Trench guys, don't ya? Judging that this is now the third song I've had to review from them, all three from different albums too. But unlike the firm punchiness of Cross My Heart or the sweeping ambition of Astoria, this is just a regular old pop rock song. And this has got that particularly stiff, synthetic sound I could never warm up to. It honestly sounds like Disney Channel music to me. I don't know how else to put it. And the song is mostly just about hooking up, really, but not even in any interesting, intriguing ways. It's kind of catchy, but I don't know, I need some special element to this to keep me going, and this just falls too flat for me to think of it much. Y'all, trust me when I say that competition was stiff as hell. Also, I just never cared for this one. So here's the thing. Daft Punk are very good at sampling, and they're usually very good at turning their samples into some slick dance grooves. Most of Discovery alone is a prime example of this. And yet, this is the point of the album where the momentum always halted at its tracks for me.
Work it, make it, do it, makes us.
Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger feels more like an exercise in sampling, without the necessary drive to transcribe these edits to anything bigger than its parts. Sure, it's fun seeing how these vocal bits build upon each other and get more chaotic, but also, I simply don't know what I'm supposed to feel from this. It's a cool groove, I'll give them that, except, oh wait, it's virtually unchanged from its source material, and that song is way better anyway. And when all this sampling moves over into choppy, glitchy territory, well, frankly, I'm just counting the seconds at that point. It's neat for what it is, certainly a different sound for the time, but at this juncture, I just never want to hear it again. Sorry, again. Okay, I promise you, I don't just hate all electronic music. But also, I feel like anyone who watched my last subscriber special should know that this kind of track was not gonna do well here. It's a 10.5 minute slow burn, with the first half made up of these static soundscapes, likely intended to build up its tense ambience. And I guess for a certain type of listener, it'd be really effective. Unfortunately, I'm not that listener. The riffs and keys feel a bit too aimless for my liking, and very little about this half of the song grabs me in any significant way. And then the actual drop comes in, and yeah, I'm underwhelmed. Maybe this would work in an Electric Daisy type setting, but it's not like I'd ever know. I've never, ever been a club kid. That's simply not how I listen to music. Honestly, I'm only keeping it from the very bottom because it's some decent background music, but without any compelling melodic structure, thematic cohesion, or really any proper feeling about this, I just can't connect with it any further. Sorry, yet again. Not gonna lie, I definitely feel like the song was passed on to me based on the absolute 90s energy of its animated music video. But I don't review music videos, I review songs. And as such, well, yeah, this is a pretty standard New Jack Swing tune in its basest form. This comes right at the peak of Paula Abdul's popularity, but the hooks are considerably limper than her previous tunes. This ain't no straight up or cold-hearted for sure. This is like the most basic definition of passable pop song to me, and mostly just reads like filler. Fun filler, sure, but filler nonetheless. I mean, technically I put it above my lowest placed patron pick last time, so... I don't know your name. So August D is also known as Suga, and is best known as a member of BTS. And just like others of the group, he has his own solo career, seemingly used as a vessel to dive into some darker, more personal topics, which I can certainly appreciate. I actually best know this album for its closing track, Snooze, which is, to date, the final track credited to the late Ryuichi Sakamoto. But back on track. Amygdala is a song wherein August details some very specific touchstones in his upbringing, particularly stemming from the emotional trauma of his parents' health crises. And the emotional weight of this is mirrored by the hazy K-pop production, which I'll admit is a type that's not completely within my tastes. Still, the lyrical depth is really admirable, and August D's performance is strong enough to keep the track compelling. The whole song is very anxious, almost unpleasantly so, especially in the chorus as he screams at his own brain to allow him to escape his fear of constant uneasiness. It's kinda heartbreaking, actually. Again, this is far from a style toward which I normally gravitate, but I really admire the strength and honesty on display. If this is more your speed, I'd highly recommend you check it out. You'll probably find something to love here. Before making this video, I'd only heard of Mexican Institute of Sound in passing, this being the stage name of musician Camilo Lara. And it is apparently an electronic project first and foremost, which is interesting to me since this song carries the energy of 60s style garage rock to an absolute T. It's a very playful track, with Lana's frantic delivery of these verses awesomely reflected by the wild and groovy instrumentation. And lyrically, it tells the story of an organized robbery scenario gone awry, which is always fun. It's a neat little track, good for that quick burst of energy, even if I don't get a whole lot from it otherwise. Definitely eager to check out more from him soon though. And already we got the next patron pick, and I actually feel kind of bad about this one considering the artists that are involved. But again, I gotta be honest. First, some background. Lyzette is a 16-year-old jungle musician, and he had built up enough groundswell through his online releases that, come the release of his 2023 album, he was able to collaborate with two of the biggest names in South Korean shoegaze. And generally speaking, this is a sound I really like. Giant washes of fuzzy guitar, interspersed with that softer strumming and a warm blanket of synth sweeping over it like a rainfall. It's nice. And yet, nice is kind of where I gotta stop with my compliments. For as pleasant and immediately appealing as the sound is, there's also just so little cohesion to its individual sections. It feels very much like a series of unique parts strung together with little overarching motifs or hooks to speak of. Like this part. That's pretty cool, and yet the transitions to and from this part, as well as throughout the whole song, are pretty clunky, borderline non-existent. It really is frustrating. Moreover, and I'll take fault for not checking beforehand, but I could not find any of these lyrics at all, which made this even more of a struggle to get through due to the muddy vocal mix that makes these singers totally incomprehensible most of the time. I even left a comment on the official YouTube audio hoping for a response, but nope. And I'm just assuming there are multiple singers, but I honestly can't really tell either way. I feel bad putting any patron pick this low, but even more so since it does sound nice to me. At the same time, it's also just impossible for me to justify placing it above some of these other songs coming up, is all.
Sweet dreams are made of these. Who am I to decide?
Having grown up with a ton of 80s music, especially 80s new wave, this was always one that appeared in every set, compilation, and playlist from this era. Despite this, I've always felt a bit cold about this one. Observing it here though, it does work, particularly in how the duo wade through these ponds of chilly synth pop and pull out some pretty good hooks from it. Shout out to the bridge in particular, that's a fine moment. I'll admit that it does suffer from its repetition, and also feels like the song struggles to wrap itself up after a while. It's a cool sound, but honestly, Here Comes the Rain Again performs this much better, and is way more interesting to boot. Trust me, y'all, I have a point to make with this one.
Ay, breaking down and I had the whole world watching, but the worst part is really who watched me. Every night I cried, I almost died.
Let me get one thing straight off the bat. I am 100% Team Meg. Additionally, well, I am totally on board with Cobra.
I'm sitting in the dark room thinking, probably why I always end up drinking. Yes, I'm very depressed.
I love the brooding atmosphere here, and the way Megan spits such appropriate venom toward those who had let her down during her hardest times. Along with this, it is absolutely one of her most fascinating instrumentals to date. I love that dance between those fluttering synths and the menacing guitar samples.
I know you've been worried about me telling people that's not me. Honestly, I kind of feel like you plotting.
And in case it wasn't clear by now, the Spirit Box remix of the song is a major downgrade in my eyes. The most immediate turn off here is a new instrumental, with the harder riffs and blasting drums of what I assume are Spirit Box's contributions. This just isn't the kind of hard rock I'm into, y'all. But the worst part of it all is that this inadvertently dampens the power of Megan's voice here. The original is so rough and confrontational, while in the remix, she's so buried by these chugging riffs and blown out production, it's just plain difficult to make her out sometimes. And I might have given this a pass. But unfortunately, Spirit Box also gave us a whole other chorus.
Leave me alone in the dark. I'm shedding my...
To be clear, it is not the vocalist herself who I dislike. She sounds fine. But at the same time, well, this is very much Megan's narrative, and it's frustrating to think that we couldn't just let her have this moment for herself. And okay, I'll just say it. So much of Megan's struggle also stands as a cultural representation of how often black women are dehumanized and disrespected in their lowest moments, because you know she wouldn't be receiving the same amount of weird hate if she was a white woman in the same position.
I'm killing myself when bitches are trying to be nice.
So again, no hate to this vocalist, or anyone in Spirit Box really, but adding a white person's voice to the mix as if these experiences are at all comparable just undermines the whole message, nullifying the very specific significance of the song. I don't know, it's ultimately harmless, but also puts a bitter taste in my mouth the longer I think about it. I'm sticking with the original, personally.
Some more, you're changing your heart.
Aw man, I remember the song from an old Apple commercial. Cute stuff. And that says a lot about what kind of tune we're dealing with. It's the purest representation of that type of adorable indie twee pop that dominated the airwaves in the 2000s. Perfect for a sterile, aesthetically pleasing iPod ad. It's fluffy, lovey-dovey, and also without a ton of depth to it. Though this revisit did have me realize how pleasant this instrumental is, especially with that bouncy build-up, and how the horns slowly ease into the mix until they totally dominate the space by the end. Nonetheless, well, the less girl-driven I get through the years, the less need I have for stuff like this. But a bit of flowery goodness is still nice from time to time. Alright, so did you guys see the rating I gave that last song? Here, let me show you again as a refresher. That is a 7 out of 10. This is a good score, and that means every song from here on out is a song I genuinely enjoy to some degree. And all thanks to you guys, that's really awesome. And that means no one is allowed to get mad at me for this next one. I should make it clear right away that I am not a huge fan of The Wall. It doesn't appeal to me much, unfortunately. And even though I did like Comfortably Numb as a kid, well, with the combination of overplay and my ever-changing music taste, the magic has just about worn all the way down. I'm not a fan of Roger Waters' half-spoken delivery, and the dreamy atmosphere is simply not exciting enough to get me immersed. Additionally, well, it's a little weird reviewing the song separate from the rest of The Wall, ain't it? I mean, this is literally a scene from the album playing out in real time, and it kinda makes no sense if you don't know what's happening. It actually sort of baffles me that this is one of the Pink Floyd tracks that the radio loves the most, but the psychedelic sleepiness is probably the base appeal there, so fair enough. It's pleasant anyway. I've committed so many acts of violence already, so why not go for another one? Here's what I place above that all-time beloved Pink Floyd song. Un, dos, tres, cuatro. I find it so funny that I tend to struggle with intricate jazz masterpieces like Giant Steps, and yet this is what gets me absolutely turned the hell up. Being Mexican myself, I've gone to my own share of family parties. As a result, I've heard El Sonidito so many times in my life. This background music you're hearing right now? Yep. That's the whole thing. A singular, shrill, super repetitive motif set along this tropical beat. Every so often the rest of the instrumentals taper off, leaving the singular note to sing all alone, until... Works every time. But it does help that it's got a pretty slick percussive groove, and Hechizero's band are so charismatic and fun too. It's all about the energy here. This makes my feral animal brain happy, and I'm so thankful it's in my life. Every now and then, you get that brilliant pop tune that absolutely transcends all barriers of language and cultural difference. And sometimes, this song spearheads 2 decades worth of meme culture. With this particular song, it's absolutely in its hook. Or rather, its series of hooks it strings along so naturally. Seriously though, the song is so damn catchy, it should be illegal. And well, that's all I can really say about this one. It's an infectious boy band type pop song with some glorious hooks, and it's also about as surface level of a cool pop song as you can get. Good for the old karaoke performance, I bet, but if you're expecting me to pull anything more meaningful out of this, well, there's just nothing else there. For what it is though, it's fun.
A kiss on the hand may be quite continental, but
Nobody fits the bill of old Hollywood glamour quite like Marilyn Monroe did, so it makes total sense that her most iconic musical number is one where she sings about the material thrills of diamonds. And yet, for all that is said about her beauty, what tends to get overlooked is just how charismatic of a performer she was, and this can be heard in how she so gracefully dances around the show tune melody with absolute pizzazz, all as she coyly turns down the greedy men who pursue her. With the passing of time, these lovers will come and go as they please, but her diamonds are forever.
he's your guy with stock sigh, but beware.
And yes, the elephant in the room is that this is ultimately a song about the joys of commercialism. The popularity of this number even directly resulted in the skyrocketing of diamond purchases, which, if you know anything about diamond mining, ain't great. Still, there is nothing like the charms of the classic old Hollywood musical, and this is one of the best slices of the era you can get, yeah. As much as Guts is an album that is plainly not for me, I definitely admire Olivia Rodrigo for bringing back to the mainstream that particular brand of angst-driven alt-rock that absolutely dominated the 90s. It's such a good sound, and she pays it well justice, in both the confident swagger of her talk-sing delivery and the power of those wider, belting moments. It still feels very much like a Rodrigo song by nature, just one reprinted really well into the style. I just have one nitpick. That's a pretty good climax, but I really wish she leaned all the way into that halftime smolder for just a bit longer. In other words, I just want Olivia Rodrigo's sludge metal, damn it. Wait, there are 2 songs by these guys here?
Hey ho, let's go, folklore and rock and roll, like a treno.
Yeah, go figure. Anyway, I obviously prefer this over DJ Vasilia by a lot, and it's for the simple fact that everything here is just that much stronger. It eschews the dated electronic elements in favor of some really fun accordion and fiddle interplay. Moreover, the energy here is incredibly vibrant. I could only imagine that this would go off in a live setting. And at its core, it's a message of global unity, with the personified train as a centerpiece. The train knows no borders or boundaries. All it knows is just to move forward. Therefore, we owe it to ourselves to be like the train and put aside our differences in the name of tolerance. I will admit that it did take a little while to warm up to this one, but at the end of the day, I just can't deny a good accordion when I hear one. Song's a jam for sure. Check it out. Alright, so let's take a moment to remember all the songs I've covered here so far. Okay, now that that's in our brains, here's the song I ranked above them all. Alright, so I grew up in the 2000s, and I know there was a lot of hip-hop of the day that had a similar percussion-based, auto-tune heavy sound as this one. At the same time, well, nothing ever really sounded like Pop Champagne. That spare, lonely beat introduces the song, instilling in us a bit of tension over what crazy party vibes could potentially follow. And then Ron Browse comes in, and this tension is immediately released like a deflating balloon. All the girls give it to me, you ain't gotta take it, It's, where does the beat start? What is the melody to this thing? And he sure does sound like that, doesn't he? Man's just making up his own rules, and that rules. The moment where the synths come in is the closest the crunk era's come to a spiritual experience. It's so baffling in a very special way that circles all the way around to stunning brilliance. I'm hesitant to call this avant-garde, and yet I simply can't think of another crunk hit from the era that fits the description better. I don't know, this might be a secret masterpiece, and I'm tired of pretending it isn't. And now for the most perplexing of patron picks. Maybe not as perplexing as Pop Champagne, but I digress.
There's a little creepy house in a little creepy place, little creepy town.
So apparently, Curly is a singer-songwriter from Estonia who is best known for her inspirational beat-heavy club anthems, with the exception being the one song she is best known for internationally, so go figure. Anyway, there's just something a bit off about this one, felt in the sparseness of the production, the hollow piano riff, and the flat vocal delivery of Curly herself. There's a melodic bass here, but it all feels very cold and detached, like a sugary pop song that's been emptied out and sedated past the point of good taste. But then, there are also moments that get me snapped back to intrigue, like this bridge here, which is frankly just pretty cool. Lyrically, Curly sings in these childish rhyme patterns about this young girl, seemingly drifting about in her own world. Over time, it becomes clear that Curly is singing about her younger self, with the sadness and insecurity perpetually floating above her in a gray haze. Yet this haze opens up at the chorus, lifting her eyes to the opportunities that await her past this darkness. It's a letter to her past self, told through these childlike eyes, and it's actually pretty sweet in that regard. In any case, it's certainly not like anything else I've ever heard, and as confused I am by it, I also have a ton of respect for it, yeah. Here's one we all know, and, well, this has aged about as well as the vast majority of those other 90s teen pop hits, and just as poorly as well. Still, there's a good amount of thrust behind the tune, and Christina absolutely kills it on the vocal front. I'm also really nostalgic for the sliding synths, popping percussion, and subtle piano chords that play throughout. These sounds really bring me right back to being a kid again. I never really find the need to return to this song these days, as others of its ilk have held up way better, but there's also no denying its powerful presence in the annals of pop musicdom. It's a teen pop classic, and certainly for good reason. So glad we're continuing this trend. It's just funny to me.
I was made for the war, fix it to the scars, but you got
Obligatory praise for Hemlock Springs and declaration of my undying support, blah blah blah. Anyway, yep, she's still just so damn cool. This to me feels like Springs making her own Talking Head song, with its steady, excited rhythm, eccentric percussion, and low-key guitars in place of her usual bouncy synth work and vibes. She continues to be extremely fascinating with her concepts and execution, although I will also admit that this isn't quite indicative of her forward-thinking artistry this time. It feels a bit unfinished, and doesn't have as prominent of a fingerprint as the others I've reviewed. Still, it's a really colorful song, and if this is an inkling of a new style sprouting its wings in the future, I am all for it. Ah yes, dog bless Troye Sivan for shamelessly giving us a cool mindless club banger about drugs and gay sex. The house aesthetic is very much oversaturated these days, but I don't care. I'll always have a soft spot for booming beats and big hooks. The sampled chorus here is also pretty neat. It really gives the song that distinct trait that makes it really stand out. I will say that Sivan himself doesn't have a ton of personality here, but this might actually work in his favor for that certain mellow anonymity these big house songs sometimes need. All things considered though, the extended version of the song is absolutely the superior one. Really keeps the party going for that much longer. It's so good. I've known of Ado for a little while now, and as of late, I've been really impressed with how efficiently she could switch up her style. Here, she's trying on some city pop vibes, and, well, the results are pretty much as expected. This is just so bright and catchy with buzzy synths and horn sounds that bring some real bounce to the track. It's a fun peppy pop song that is incredibly easy to digest, and as such, I struggle to say much more about this one. Except that, well, I feel like in the shift toward more crowd-pleasing pop material, she's lost a bit of her huge, often abrasive personality along the way, for better or worse. This is very cute, don't get me wrong, but it's cute in a very surface-level way. I'm not totally sure if this is an improvement, but it's a good song in any case, so maybe I should stop thinking so hard about it. You've heard of Doja Cat, now get ready for...
Crawling under my skin, running out of oxygen.
Strangely enough, Toa Bird is an artist I didn't hear much about until after I started work on this video. She seems to lie in that Phoebe Bridgers, Lucy Dacus school of emotional girls with guitars music that's really popular right now, and honestly, she's pretty good at it. This Isn't Me in particular is a pretty low-key track with a slightly rockin' edge, dealing with that familiar anxiety about feeling out of place in an environment where everyone else seems to have it totally figured out. This was apparently inspired by Toa Bird's experiences at Paris Fashion Week, being constantly surrounded by beautiful celebrities and wondering what the hell she's doing there in the first place. And yeah, that's a specific, honestly unrelatable example, but I also think that these feelings of insecurity and alienation are near universal. And Toa Bird's mellow yet aching delivery of these melodies bring a good level of intimacy to this track, all that more emphasized by her longing for the nurturing embrace of her loved one to bring her back to her comfortable reality.
Take me back to my
Not much to say about this one, except, well, it's quite good. I'm gonna have to check out more from Toa Bird in the future, especially if she's got other songs just as striking as this one. No, trust me, I feel real bad about this one.
You're simply the best. Better
Upon the passing of Tina Turner last year, this was one of the songs I saw shuffling around the most in honor of her legacy, and yeah, fair enough. She definitely had a number of songs that spoke to many schools of listeners, and yet this one, I never felt too strongly about myself. To be fair, Tina's solid in damn near everything I've heard her in, and this is no exception. She owns this tune from the first second to the last, and it's just impossible to look away. But also, honestly, I've always much preferred the sophisticated soul of her private dancer output so much more than the relatively faceless AOR production here. It does feel like those loud synths are competing for screen time with this actual diva, which really isn't necessary. I will say though that I do really like Edgar Winter's saxophone solo. Just when I'm starting to lose interest, it always pulls me back in again. Really good stuff overall. Okay, this is just plain surreal.
Si la perra está amarrada, aunque ladre todo el día.
Like, I don't think I could understate how baffling it is that a song like this got into this video. You all voted this in. That's so wild. Big thanks to the regional Mexican boom of last year, I suppose.
Por el zorro lo supimos.
Anyway, having grown up surrounded by this style, I'm well aware that Los Tigres del Norte are one of the biggest names of their scene. Likewise, I have a ton of fondness for this sound, with the robust accordion rhythm and the just as impassioned vocal delivery. It's a pretty decent song already, but when you dig deeper, it gets quite a bit more interesting.
Y se pierden las ganancias. Y el granjero.
In an Animal Farm-like fashion, these lyrics use a host of farm life metaphors as a direct condemnation of the Mexican government in regards to the country's organized drug crime ring and the corrupt exploitation of such. It's a lot to unpack, and frankly, I don't feel equipped to be the one to do it. I'll just say for now that I'm pretty glad I got one of these songs in one of my videos, and I really enjoy getting a chance to dive deeper into this one. Some nice, unexpected nostalgia. Half of the patron picks in the bottom 30? It's more likely than you think. I'll begin by noting that I don't know a lot about J-Rock as a whole. However, I am at least aware enough to know that Theater D by Myth and Royd is pretty different from a lot of it. Kinda in its own little pocket. I mean, yeah, we've got the big hooks here, the verse-chorus-verse format is virtually untouched, and this vocalist sounds pretty nice to the ear. And yet, quite literally everything else surrounding this is unhinged, even unsettling. The thrashing environment feels ever so slightly too heavy for the song's danceable vibes, including the guitars that sound like South Asian instruments completely chopped apart. It's a really interesting clash of the hard rock performance, the rougher abrasive electronic touches, and the aforementioned pop structuring. And it all kinda rules. Certainly helps that the vocalist also keeps up the energy really well. She sure can sing her guts out. I don't know, man, this whole song simply goes harder than most music I listen to, and I really love that about it. It's a real grower, that's for sure. Man, I really miss this era of Pink, where she still kept one foot in the realm of that aughts era pop sound while still unafraid to show off her soulful side. Just Like a Pill, likewise, is one of her best songs, certainly the most out-rock leading hits of her career.
I can't stay on your life support, there's a shortage in the switch.
She gives a really solid performance here, her voice holding in just the right amount of grit to make these emotions work. And rightfully so, as this presents the plight of her toxic relationship held in close proximity to drug use. Much like an addiction, these situations can feel just as good as it could tear them apart from the inside out. It's a really solid chorus, even if it does get beaten to the ground a bit. It's not perfect and has all the messiness one would expect from 2000s pop rock, but man is it a good, nostalgic jam nonetheless. Time for a little Russian history, I guess. I'll just say right off the bat that I've never liked Boney M much. With that said, there's also no denying that Rasputin is the best thing they've ever done. This intro alone is absolute art. That firm percussive beat coupled with the Russian-influenced guitar melody leading into that good old disco sound, it absolutely rules. as does the rest of the song. It's a really cool combination of the modern and traditional that always gets me going. And it's also a funny concept, yeah. I don't know if we needed a disco song about the notorious Russian mystic of its namesake making him out as a playboy and party animal of sorts, but we have it now. Altogether, yeah, this is still a Boney M song, with vocals that never sound completely enthused and a structure that folds upon itself after a while. It's a hella good time regardless though, so I'll take it.
I'ma be on time. Louis Vuitton umbrella when I walk through the rain in the kitchen whipping chicken kind of bread like kinds good dog.
This song was a favorite minor hit for so many last year, and yeah, makes sense. Most obviously, that Mexican OT's flow is absolutely insane. All that more supported by this totally impeccable enunciation. If you're able to roll your R's, might as well demonstrate it in the showiest way possible.
I'm a dirty bad baby from dirty bag with a dirty case. Slide down your block, light it up with flames.
Dude definitely carries the bulk of this track. He is such a dynamic performer. Nonetheless, the guest rappers do a solid work at fitting the vibe as well. It's also just really nice to see Paul Wall come back into relevancy again, as I have a bit of a soft spot for the Texas rap scene. The song doesn't have a whole lot going for it outside of these personalities, but sometimes that's just all you need. Song's a jam in any case. Hi Malcolm, you get the funny number this time. Alright, Plunderphonics Masters Avalanches are a name I am incredibly familiar with. I even talked about them in a previous subscriber special, which only makes it that much funnier how much of an anomaly that one was. While their most recent album, We Will Always Love You, is no Since I Left You by any means, it also does a pretty good job at keeping up these vibes for a whole new generation of listeners, and Music Makes Me High is one of its highlights. The juxtaposition of these two sample sources, affectionately presented with a firm, pounding bass underneath, damn, that's some rightful feel-good catharsis, alright. I will admit that the mixing to this one is a bit swampy, but I don't know, I kinda like that about it. It kinda strengthens the atmosphere even, making it feel that much more like a washed out disco record of yore. I've never been one to care much about mixing anyway, it's all about the tunes for me, and this is a damn good one at that. You ever wonder what it would sound like if Rick Rolling was replaced with Donna Rolling? Well, okay, me neither, but we have an answer to the question anyway. I'll admit that it's a little odd reviewing a late 80s track from disco queen Donna Summer, but as you can probably hear, it's really good. Stock Aitken Waterman's gaudy productions can be divisive. They tend to work the best with an equally bombastic performer working alongside him. And they sure have struck gold with this one. Yeah, she just kinda owns the track, man. I'll admit that it pretty much lives and dies off that one hook, but goddamn is it a good hook. Perfect amounts of huge melodrama baking around every corner of this one. I love melodrama, as we established, and yeah, girl totally sells it. Wouldn't be a Liz subscriber special without me submitting to you some of my childhood nostalgia.
Trying to find out what we were up to, saying, why were you creeping down late last night? But then I see two shadows.
Aw yeah, this song was my absolute jam when I was like 8 years old. I feel like we take for granted this brand of retro two-step coming back in style now. For a while there, I thought it'd stay forever confined to the late 90s and early 2000s. Honestly, this is more of a slick R&B jam with some mild two-step qualities than anything else. Regardless, yeah, it's a really cool sound. I especially love when that deft percussion comes through on the chorus, alongside the violins and the gentle guitar riff looping below it all.
Parents trying to find out what we were up to, saying, why can't you keep...
This hook is totally drilled into my brain at this point. It's so catchy. It's a little more than a well-worn story of conflict between kids and their parents, how the older folks just don't see eye to eye with the harmless fun they're having together. And, well, this is also pretty harmless fun. Nostalgic as all hell, but a genuinely rad pop song too.
Welcome to my island. See the palm trees.
I've already made it clear across a few videos that I don't love Caroline Polachek as much as the other music nerds, but I've always enjoyed this particular song. If nothing else, it nicely demonstrates her great vocal ability. I always attempt to sing along to those wordless belting parts at least. Otherwise, it's a rather lightweight song, mostly carried by that enormous hook. I can capture glimpses of some horny winks and nudges here and there, but it takes a little bit of digging to get to them. It's a good song, but it also takes itself a bit more seriously than I'd like.
You're so smart, so talented, but now the water's turning red and it's all...
Though I do think the choral breakdown at the bridge is pretty cool, wherein Polacek is edging on some new life experience and building up motivation to just take that dive already. I, again, would have liked more of that energy in the rest of the song, but it's perfectly solid in any case. Kind friends of all genders and species, the queen has arrived.
Yeah. Last year, Valentine's Day, you would swornly say, babe, I love you.
I would like us all to collectively put some respect on Khalees's name, please and thank you. Anyway, yeah, I'll be real. This is basically just another one of those tracks that were big in the late 90s. Those spunky hip-hop influenced radio jams, cutting down the no-good cheating men in these ladies' lives. And yet, this is also far louder than most of those songs ever were. The instrumental is rough and bounces like a lead ball, and Khalees herself, well... Yeah, she is royally pissed. It's quite the sight to behold. This feels to me like the holy combination of hot girl R&B and riot girl punk, and honestly, I super dig it. Along with those loud chanting gang vocals and backing synths I could only describe as Galaga battle sounds, it's just a strange song in so many ways. Yet I absolutely love songs about angry women who misbehave, and this is so up my alley. Khalees rules, y'all. Surprise? Okay, so I want to review this as honestly as possible, separate from all of the future nostalgia saturation over the past 4 years, as well as its byproducts. It's pretty hard to do, but I'll try my best. As a standalone pop song though, this one is good as hell on its own merits. I love the punchy melodies of the verses, and that soaring pre-chorus in particular is my absolute favorite part of the song. All this is to say that the chorus itself is a bit of a letdown. Just not as great of a payoff to me. Not a huge drawback though, it's still proper nice and loose. Dua Lipa herself is a bit of a non-present here. She mostly just sounds like she's going through the motions. Still, that's some real nice, flashy French house production. Sometimes that's all you really need to carry a good bit of dance pop, which, yup, this sure is that. Okay, I have a question. Why the hell did we, as a nation, make probably this band's worst song their biggest hit? It really is amazing just how pretty much every other Foster the People song I've heard has been vastly superior over the one people actually know. It's like clockwork. And the theory proves correct once again because, yeah, this rules. I was immediately drawn in by the groove. It's got a downbeat, kinda scuzzy sound I really dig. It's a pretty solid indie rock sound, but digging into the lyrics properly helped me appreciate it all that much more. Our speaker is rightfully pissed, openly sneering at how the corrupt leaders of our world can shamelessly hold communities captive in the name of their own greedy, bloodthirsty motive.
Now I'm staring at the moon, wondering why the bottom fell. Been searching for answers.
But then he pulls it back to introspection on the chorus, asking what this means for his own existence within these communities. He questions just how he can move forward, knowing that the world around him could only feel comforting again if he gains it back by brute force. All of this is saddled with the call to break free from these chains and work toward making the world a better place in whatever little ways we can. It's really striking in its relevance for sure. Maybe the production doesn't bite as hard as it needs to for this message, but honestly, the message itself is pretty strong as is. It certainly left an impression on me for sure. Okay, I have another question. Have you ever come across a song that makes your brain want to explode, and yet you absolutely cannot stop listening to it? Oh, this sure is something, alright. It's plain overstimulation in song form. Between the laser-focused synths, the backing guitar, the cheerleader vocals, and God knows what else, we've got like 4 different hooks and melodies vying for attention all at once, and the space is so cluttered. I chose this as a list pick specifically because it perplexes me, and I wanted to spend some time trying to understand it. I don't know if I got any closer, but maybe it doesn't matter? Much like with Music Makes Me High, I am extremely compelled by the absolute muchness of the song. The messy layers, the sloppy mixing, and the wide emotions that chisel through it all. This commenter says that this is their favorite song of all time, and you know what? I can totally see that. There's so much raw beauty captured in a short span of time, and it feels pretty damn good to hear it all hit. Simply put, this is music you just feel, and I think that's pretty dope. This was the very first music video played on MTV, and I can think of no better song to serve as a signpost for how our music consumption had totally changed. In a decade defined by the sugary, ear-grabbing melodies, this is one of the most fascinating, instantly memorable for sure. The Buggles production carries on those vestiges of that early new wave era, where an artist gained incredible access to a kaleidoscope of synth sounds with little experience on how to use them, which makes the classic pop and baroque inflections in the sound all that more impressive. It really sounds like nothing else to come out at this time. Along with the lyrical concept, which analyzes how technology shifts the ever-evolving tides of art and media, it's one of those rare pop songs that feels truly forward-thinking. It's quirky, certainly very nerdy, but it's also quite beautiful in its tireless, sweeping ambition. It holds up tremendously for sure. And speaking of nerds, alright, so this is Love Shack. I know Love Shack, you know Love Shack. Ask a random person on the street if they know Love Shack, and they'll likely sing back one of the 20 different hooks crammed into this thing. Which, yeah, there sure are a lot of hooks, aren't there? It's such a fluid song, one where not a single verse sounds like any previous, all of them connected together by that chorus that grabs you by the shoulders and demands you belt along. It's the exact result you get when you assign the band that made Rock Lobster to churn out a radio-friendly pop tune, and I would have it no other way. The years of overplay have dampened a bit of the novelty, but there still really is no other song quite like this one. Even after all this time, I'm always still so charmed by this with every single listen. It's just so vibrant and fun. Find me at the next karaoke night belting this out really badly. Hell yeah. To sleep, I pray to Lord my soul. I remember a lot of the hype that JID was getting back in 2022, and I even gave a couple listens to the Forever Story back then. Cody Blue 31 was one of the major standouts to me, and unexpectedly so. Just keep on swaying on. I've always been drawn to JID's excellent flows and creative narrative building as a rapper, but on this particular song, he demonstrates that he has a pretty good singing voice as well. Nothing outstanding to be certain, but fitting for a simple tune for sure. And it's quite the solid, if brief, tune about perseverance, past loss, and trauma, tying it to specific moments in JID's life, while also tying it to the universal experiences in the Black community. Get your back up off the road, keep swinging on. And it uses that mantra of swing on as a lovely elevating force, one that digs deep into the heart as we all hope for brighter days, in spite of the pain. In times where it seems like there's little we can do to carry on, this song reminds us of how crucial it is to punch past the turmoil and find the glimmers of light hidden beneath, and I'm really grateful for that. Regrettably, I must now enter my Disney adult era.
So many times out there, I've watched a happy pair.
First of all, I know that this commenter requested me to talk about a different song here, but honestly, I want to first address the song leading up to it. It's my video. I do what I want. In Disney's A Hunchback of Notre Dame, Heaven's Light comes soon after the titular bell ringer Quasimodo had befriended the beautiful Roma woman Esmeralda. Having been isolated from the city his entire life, this was the first act of kindness he'd ever truly received, and his words about her are ones of sweet, thankful innocence. He sees her as an angel brought down from heaven to help pick him up from his loneliness. She's helped him find the will to live, and he absolutely loves her for that. It's a stunning little ballad in this movie full of wonderfully composed musical numbers, including the one that directly follows Heaven's Light.
Beata Maria, you know I am a righteous man. Of my virtue.
Hellfire is, on the contrary, the virtuous minister Frollo's perspective on the same woman, and it is significantly darker. Instead of the angel as seen through Quasimodo's eyes, she is, on the contrary, a symbol of sin, a figment of evil sent to tempt specifically Frollo and drive this holy man to damnation.
The sun caught in her raven hair is blazing in me out of all control.
He is intoxicated with lust over her beauty, contending with the pre-existing prejudices he holds over what kind of woman he believes she is. And the music depicts the intensity of the situation so well, the swelling strings and intense Latin sung choir echoing how deep this hatred runs. Because to him, these particular temptations are arbiters of sin and should be stamped out completely, by any way necessary.
Destroy Esmeralda and let her taste the fires of hell.
I'm far from the first to say this, but it truly is stunning just how a song like this could exist in a Disney film for kids. It's a striking condemnation of the ways in which religion can blind those committed to the cloth, all to the point of violence they believe is righteous and done in the name of their god. Alan Menken's music for this film is just enthralling, and Tony Jay gives a magnificent sneer of the performance as a minister. It's a furiously dark symphony, one of the most shining moments of this golden age of animation, and it never fails to give me the chills every single time. Yeah, they don't call me the king of whiplash for nothing.
My milkshake brings all the boys to the yard, and they're like, it's better than yours. Damn right, it's better than.
Oh yes, this song is so good, and everyone is wrong. I'm so glad I can finally review this one, as I've always enjoyed it quite a bit. It was actually one of my last cuts from those old 2003 videos. Observing her hits, it's clear that Khalees is the absolute queen at performing the loudest, most in-your-face hooks for unsexy people to hate and all the hot folks to get absolutely down to. And in Milkshake, she is dominant yet sultry, goofy yet so carefree, and God, that is the hottest thing imaginable. Moreover, this percussion is just so fun, and that fat, blown-out bass is almost a performer in and of itself, like a structure around which Khalees can pole dance as she pleases. And let's be real, it's one of the catchiest songs of the century for sure. It's been one of the biggest signifiers for hotness in media for the past 2 decades, and for damn good reason. And it's got a hook that everyone and their grandmother knows at this point. It's been sampled and paid homage to so many times it's hard to keep track. All the way to the present day where, you know what? I'm gonna stop myself there for now. To be continued.
You don't wanna be changed like it changed me. Been dodging gods I didn't want.
Having been exposed to Kesha's darker music for quite a few years at this point, this song still took me a bit off guard. I covered another track from this album last time, and that one was cool and all, but ultimately underwhelming, especially since I knew that this is what she was capable of.
You said don't ever eat the acid if you don't wanna be changed like it changed me.
The emotional resonance is incredibly potent, with the droning keys and sterile vocal filter presenting a really haunting atmosphere from the start. And it all hinges on the off-spread warning about partaking in psychedelics, wherein one's consciousness is open to possibilities unthinkable to the sober mind. All ignorance inevitably shed in the name of expanded consciousness, which can, in itself, be traumatic.
You said all the edges got so jagged, now everything you saw then can't be unseen. You said don't ever eat.
And the repetition of that hook is even more haunting, as it confirms that this song is actually about, well, trauma itself. Being changed by the darkness of the waking world, which could beat one down to total oblivion. And if there's anyone who's seen her own share of darkness through the years, it's Kesha.
I am the one that I've been fighting the whole time. Hate has no place in the divine.
I was initially disappointed with the lack of catharsis from all this build-up, but nowadays, I'm very fond of its bleakness. It's a perfect display of the realities that lurk just over the edges of our imagination, challenging us to take in the ways that Kesha has been changed by her past and use it as a reflection of ourselves and our own experiences. And that's how you know this is some good art. I like to try to close off each cheer with positivity, and you know what? I think this one fits the bill pretty well.
So I play along. We refrain from touch. We are satellites.
I'm mostly familiar with Enter Shikari through their earlier post-hardcore material, so it's still a little strange hearing them on a song like this, with these much poppier sound and electronic dimensions. Song's still real damn good though, so whatever.
And surely all my family and my friends, my God and my...
The hooks that thrive throughout this one are so big and bright, mirrored by the manic, hyperactive instrumental, and Rue Reynolds is such a passionate vocalist, crucially matching the energy here so well. The song itself transcribes some very familiar feelings of alienation faced by damn near every LGBT person trying to make their way in an ever-hostile society. This world is cruel, and the song acknowledges this, but it also stays so triumphant despite it all. It validates these emotions while also remaining defiant against these imaginary rules for what is considered correct and normal in society. Likewise, it chooses joy and hopefulness, and I don't know, that just makes my heart swell. It's a big electronic banger with a profound message at its core, and that's something I just can't ignore at all. Oh nice, one of my favorite albums of last year got its fair representation here. Thanks for that. Although, I will say that most of what I loved about Black Rainbows isn't fully present here, as Put It Down is, for the most part, a pretty straightforward art pop track.
Started again.
In any case, it's also a very good art pop track. It uses every second of its 8.5 minutes very wisely, indulging in these sumptuous sounds and melodies in one big, splendidful smolder. It does take a little while for it to really take off, but once that slow build-up reaches that big climax, wherein Bailey Ray completely releases her inner doubts and woes in lieu of a freeing, more comforting sense of self, well, at that point, it's hard not to be taken away by these loose dance rhythms and soaring vocals. While other tracks on the album tend to do it that much more for me, there's also no denying how terrific of a performer she is through it all. I've absolutely no complaint there. Gotta say, I'm pretty dang impressed with this next one. You all make me so proud. You may not have heard of Exploding Plastics, but I've been aware of this artist and this song since about 2011, when a friend introduced me to their album. It certainly left a fair impression back then, and I'm really happy it's inadvertently come back around in my life. It's a very unique track, a fascinating blend of loungy jazz, searing drum and bass, flamenco guitar rhythms, and even some trip-hop elements thrown in for good measure. And yet this melting pot inexplicably works so well. All the pieces make such an intriguing atmosphere, and it's catchy as hell to boot. Honestly, the percussion might be the most impressive part of all. It seriously kicks so much ass. I can practically envision the fast-paced, high-octane spy thriller scenarios acting out in real time. Simple fact though, is that this is just plainly cool music. It's probably the one song on this list I could recommend to pretty much every person watching this right now. Seriously, go check it out. Time for some rad space rock. Well, I call this space rock, but to be honest, this might be more post-grunge than anything, with that heavy, crunchy guitar feel that lies pretty close to Smashing Pumpkins territory, to my ears. I thought she'd be there holding daisies, she always waits for me. Nonetheless, it definitely benefits a lot from the openness of space rock, which gives the track such a wide, limitless feel. The mesh between this heaviness and the dreamlike atmosphere is, quite frankly, pretty beautiful. I eat these sonic textures up completely. It's a song where I tend to pay more attention to the blanket of sound over any of the lyrics, which are mostly just about depression. It's not like you can't hear this moodiness transcribed in the emotional thrust of the sound anyway. It really gets across that particular melancholic brain hug. The moment where one dwells into these dark feelings because it just feels pretty good at that moment. That's exactly the kind of vibe the song goes for, and it does a pretty damn good job of it.
Quinine powder and alcohol stirring till dissolved. The future isn't flying cars, it's Rachel dollars all absorbed.
Possibly the greatest opening lines in all of 2022's music.
Digital. Said he had a vision, said he had a system, said he was the one true and living.
Yeah, Billy Woods' verse on NYNEX immediately sold me from the get-go. I'll begin by reiterating just how terrific Woods is at stringing together these very stream-of-consciousness-like lines that build upon each other in its grim, escalating energy. And in this song, we get the unbearably bleak vision of a pessimistic future.
It's autonomous computers sending shooters back in time at the behest of defunct message boards.
The excitement of technological progress is in the air, and yet, nonetheless, attenuated by the lived realities of black folks. Despite the so-called progress, these communities experience the most violence and erasure of all. Disenfranchised folks simply aren't taken in regard with this future, and that's probably no accident, let's be real.
This the flow, they got Ponzi scheme written all over it. Seen the ball up like a slime, my pump fake a whole thing.
Otherwise, man is this beat just gold, with its chopped and screwed blues harmonica sample molded around the percussion like a representation of a sacred tradition's brutal dismantling. The song is bleak, but there is nonetheless so much power behind all the performers. They seek to radicalize while also doing little more than speaking on lived experiences, and you simply cannot look away. Honestly, I'd recommend you just listen to this yourself and take in every commanding second on your own time. It's well worth it.
So go and tell your friends that I'm a fucking monster. Sugar, spice, and
I don't know where some of you guys find this stuff, but yeah, keep it coming.
you off the roster. I'm a fucking monster.
This is something, alright. Okay, so I've said in the past that modern metalcore really isn't my thing, so it was a little surprising just how much I latched onto this one from the very first listen. But it's actually quite simple. It all comes down to Inaria herself and how she absolutely owns these erratic overtones. You hear it in the cute spunkiness of her rap verses, the instant earworm of that chorus hook, and the absolute violence of her unclean vocals. This is actually more like a hybrid of metalcore and hyperpop, a natural transition from the MySpace-bred scene era of the aughts, in all these candy-coated kawaii aesthetics and extreme, hyperactive gore. It's been so wild to see the younger generation embrace the scene with such earnesty, and ultimately, that's why this works so well. Inaria's performance is over the top, but it's also so impassioned. And given that I'm such a huge fan of music made by wild, improper women who don't give a shit, this pushes all the right buttons for me. I don't know why the subscriber special became a Khalees appreciation video, but I'm all for it. Scaring the Hose was one of those albums I didn't really feel any need to re-listen to after a couple go-arounds, which, yes, is why it was not mentioned at all in my best albums of 2023 video. Still, Fentanyl Tester was always one of the hardest bangers on the whole spread, and yes, a big reason is because of that fully inspired milkshake sample. I mean, a song with excellent percussion making a great foundation for another stellar percussive track? Who would have thought? Additionally, the collaboration between the two rappers is great, but honestly the track really goes off with Danny Brown's part. It's at his verse where the instrumental gets really dope, layering the staccato melody over the main sample and some ridiculous drum beats.
Hands on the wheel, no accident. Hands on the wheel, no accident.
But ultimately, it is all about that beat here, the main reason why this has been such an infectious listen for me. And that breakdown that caps off the song is an excellent cherry on top of it all. Further proof that Milkshake smashes all the boundaries, and yes, Khalees goddamn rules. Another Liz subscriber special, another patron pick, absolutely blowing me out of the water. What else is new? Ah, hell yeah. Now this is what I'm talking about. Raw dynamic guitars, a thick propulsive groove, a vocalist who struts and cavorts around it all so splendidly. All of this really brings me back to the glory days of the aughts garage rock revival. In particular, I'm feeling a lot of the hives in this one, while his singer wouldn't feel at all out of place in the Karen O school of performance. Lyrically, this is a sly retaliation against the historical objectification of women, turning the tables onto the men themselves. And this vocalist is, again, fantastic. Controlling every movement with the utmost dominance, it's incredibly intoxicating. Certainly sounds a lot better than the indie dudes, for sure. I don't know much about Estrons, except that they apparently broke up in 2019, which is unfortunate because it's clear that there was some potential for some real exciting things from them. Most impressive of all, though, is just how simple and to the point of a song this is. Ultimately, it's little more than a great song with a solid hook, and yet it stays so fresh and interesting with every listen. I'm definitely going to be revisiting this one for some time to come, and I cannot wait to do so. Don't think it, don't say it, don't think it, don't say it, don't...
Everybody, I'm gonna
Now here's a song I really loved when I was a kid, and listening to it today brings me right back to being 10 years old again. Truly the best kinds of songs. What stands out to me nowadays though is how much early aughts it sounds, with its big colorful melting pot of genre aesthetic. Sure, we've got the new disco sounds here, the main horn line and super catchy melody just about drills us in. But I also hear some hints of the budding alternative dance scene, particularly in the punchiness of those guitars and drums. The song basically lives and dies on that chorus, especially with the totally bombastic performance of the singer. But I mean, it's a good chorus, absolutely brimming with the flashiest, feel-good vibes imaginable. These verses do pale in comparison, but I don't know, I've always liked them. Nothing wrong with some good old goofy fun. I'll admit I don't really seek this one out a whole lot anymore, but it's always nice to come back to on occasion. Anything that reminds me of the vibrant summer days of 2002 is a big plus in my heart. Finally, we get some real Vocaloid in these subspecials. That last one doesn't count. That was fake Vocaloid. Seriously though, I'll say now that I have listened to a fair share of Vocaloid tunes here and there, and can honestly say that few others have connected with me as immediately as Echo.
How long have I been now? I don't know. I can't get it.
I'm gonna be perfectly honest, the fact that this is an English language tune probably helps. But then again, it's the instrumental to this one that draws me in, first and foremost. I really appreciate these sinister synths at the verses that build up momentum ever so steadily, followed by that rapturous bass that glides along that absolute bop of a chorus.
What's your house going on? Can someone tell me please? Why is it too fast to them not change?
The hook alone would have made the entire song for me, frankly. And with lyrics that tackle the struggle in existing with manic depression, the synthetic, disconnected feel of the vocal tuning really mirrors these numb sensations that often accompany mental illness. It's a great song, and one that I could have only seen being done through this style, that's for certain. Oh, y'all are in for a ride with this next one. I'm so happy that I get an opportunity to talk about them, the most perplexing of all bands. To the uninitiated, of course. The style of Lightning Bolt may just sound like disorganized, unfiltered noise to most, but to me, it's just plain impressive how much of a distinct sound they've crafted beyond just some non-rhythmic atonality. Say what you will, but no one else quite sounds like them. As such, well, Dead Cowboy has hooks, movements, unique parts that manipulate their unique intensity, with pure raw tension embedded within each and every note. These guitars are wild and scattered, and that drum work only barely keeps it all together, but the vibrant emotions displayed are what resonates most of all. And there's meaning to the song as well, as it is a scathing criticism against then-President George W. Bush and the senselessness that defined the so-called War on Terror. The borderline violent threats of the lyrics are obscured by everything else, but by God, you can just feel the rage coming off of it. And by the end of it, it's an environment in which I'm fully enveloped, one sculpted by these deft rhythms and fierce notes. And at that point, you bet I'm right there screaming along with these guys. Ladies, gentlemen, and everyone in between, it's him.
Everybody knows that the dice are loaded. Everybody rolls with.
Hell yeah, any excuse to talk about Leonard Cohen in a video is a good time for me. And yet, to be perfectly honest, I'm not the biggest fan of his later material. Yeah, his 80s stuff especially is mostly not for me. Nonetheless, it's hard to deny that Everybody Knows is delectably morbid, one of his most well-regarded songs, and for damn good reason.
Everybody knows that the boat is leaking. Everybody knows the captain lied.
But his poetry lacks in rich detail here, it more than makes up for it in full-blown nihilistic immediacy. Alongside that slinky synth line, Cohen speaks on the state of society as it stood in the late 80s, touching upon the frivolousness of wartime, the inhumanity of politicians, and even the influx of the AIDS crisis. And the sparse instrumental is balanced by some fluttering guitars floating like a specter beneath it all.
Everybody knows the deal is rotten. Old Black Joe still picking cotton for your ribbon.
And these truths are told with a razor's edge of invulnerable pessimism. Everybody knows about the sad state of the world. But will anyone do a damn thing about it? Or will we all just march along in our days with this knowledge festering in our minds like a rotting tooth? It's an outlook on things that sadly only grows more and more relevant into the present day. I can hear a lot of modern day atrocities ringing in here for sure. The song may not be quite as magnificent as Cohen's early folk works, but there's a majesty here nonetheless, and the truth it speaks is stunningly palpable, absolutely impossible to ignore, yeah. Alright y'all, here come the parts of the video where I disappoint everyone. You made this video too good.
How many special people change? How many lives are living strange?
So here's the thing, if you would have asked me in high school, I'd probably tell you that Champagne Supernova was the greatest song of all time. And it's really not hard to see why. The melody alone is tremendously pretty, like a warm hug to the heart.
Where were you while we were getting high?
And the song builds marvelously across its 7.5-minute runtime, with a feeling about as huge as its Space Center title suggests. And I've always had a soft spot for that gentle melodica after each chorus. It's so lovely. But now, all these years later, I can't help but feel that this presentation is a bit basic? I hate using that word, but it's the simplest way I can put it right now. At the end of the day though, I love hooks, melodies, intriguing lyricism, and it's all here. It's no longer the greatest song of all time to me, and it's probably not as profound as it thinks it is, but it's never not been a great listen, and the magic has hardly worn off all these years later, so sure, I'll take it.
Even though I'm satisfied, I leave my life.
Can you believe that this is the 6th Rina Sawayama song I've covered in my videos? That's so many songs. Anyway, on the face of it, Cherry sounds like some pretty standard dance pop, not quite as wild and experimental as some of Sawayama's later stuff, but it's also a damn good tune anyway. Through these sparkly melodies and big emotions, Cherry presents that array of very familiar feelings had by many a queer person slowly falling in love with someone. The experience alone can be profound and even terrifying, but when saddled with that ever-present anxiety over identity and questions over what it means to love yourself, it's a whole other special kind of thing.
Want to be my cherry now, even though I'm satisfied.
And as a colorful, big-hearted ode to pride in all its dimensions, Rina lays out these feelings and highlights the vibrating beauty of it all. It's love as an act of revolution, as a vital step towards pushing aside these insecurities and simply existing as a queer person, warts and all. The sentiment alone is quite gorgeous, and when those electric guitars come in at the end, it damn near makes me want to cry. It's a pretty perfect predecessor to the mastery of this hell, and I love it a lot. Another Liz subscriber special, another Bush-era protest jam, I guess.
16 military wives, 32 softly focused.
Ah, yes, the Decemberists. We meet again. Check out their new song, by the way. It kicks ass. As for this one, well, yeah, it also rules.
Cheer them on to their right.
I've been aware of these guys for quite some time, but I can't say that they've ever made another song quite so explicitly catchy as this one, with the strong melodic backbone that simply makes my heart swell. And yeah, it is very much an aughts-era indie song, anywhere you slice it. From the detailed chamber folk production to the anxious lyricism concerning the US military, power-hungry politicians, and even celebrity culture. Which isn't to say that these points aren't so damn pertinent to the present day, because they really are. And yet, it wouldn't be a song worth remembering if it also didn't just sound terrific. The escalation of these horns is particularly lovely, matching the skating energy while also being just plain enjoyable to listen to. I gotta admit, I never realized how much I loved this song until now. Gotta love these sub specials for giving me these cool little epiphanies. Thrice is a great band, and they're also a pretty diverse band. I'm actually far more familiar with the post-hardcore work of their earlier days, which is to say that I'm very impressed by how smoothly they've transitioned to the softer electronic edges of this sound. And yet, the material itself is no less somber. The song is invested in the topic of societal collapse, particularly in the arms of the modern technological age. The speaker likens this collapse to a post-apocalyptic wasteland, a suffocating expanse of the titular digital sea. No one can hear him scream for help because his voice has already been drowned out by the impenetrable walls of communication. He's just another drop in this ocean. No more than this. It's actually really wild that this was released in 2007, as the themes presented are no more prescient than in the present day, where digital media has now been seared so deeply into the public consciousness and to the disastrous results we are now witnessing. The electronic atmosphere instills this really potent sense of dread, and by the end of it, we ourselves are drowning in this near visceral showcase and how powerless we truly are to change it all. It's nihilistic as all hell, but you sure can't say it ain't the truth. This is way better than Rasputin, and I will hear no argument otherwise. Boy, is this just triumphant. From that opening keyboard riff to the cinematic thrill of those horns to the strong unison delivery of these vocalists that sound and feel like the most patriotic choir of all time. Truth be told, yeah, they're just trying to be German ABBA. I mean, the opener just about gives it away. Anyway, god, this is so darn catchy it hurts. It's tempting to poke fun at this song for its extremely of-the-era qualities, but it's truthfully such a rich song in the layers of orchestral arrangements, I genuinely do admire it. The most impressive part to me, however, is how it melds so much of his disco-flavored melodrama with the musical elements of Russian tradition, and it comes out the other end with one of the most infectious songs of an era where mind-melting disco tunes were a dime a dozen.
Moscow, 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 look at it.
I can't tell you how much of my brain space this song has taken up while making this video, dear lord. I honestly doubt it'll be leaving anytime soon, and well, more power to it. And here's a second of 2 patron picks from a one-hit wonder artist that is way better than the respective hit. Sounds good to me.
Sorry eyes.
I have a hard time believing Beck will ever make anything as good as Sea Change again. Here, he trades in his signature style as a quirky, irony-driven alt-rock stoner and replaces it with that of an introspective, folk-driven poet. His music, now most defined by its lush instrumentation and aching honesty.
Baby, our love.
And through it all, Lost Cause is the centerpiece of the album. The sound alone is, again, just lovely, strung together by a warm and simple guitar line and easygoing percussion. And Beck also plays this part really well. He sings about this relationship unraveling at the seams and does so with equal parts melancholia and bitterness.
No one left to let you back now.
Truthfully, it doesn't do much more than this, but also, it doesn't really need to. I am primarily a folk lover by tradition. Folk music, both old and new, is basically the genre that got me into seriously listening to music in the first place. As such, delicate and emotional folk tunes like these are always going to find a soft spot in my heart. It's simple and to the point, but simplicity comes with authenticity in the very best of folk tunes, and I think this one fits among such good company. Get me in the right mood and this song will absolutely tear me apart. You can be sure of that. And speaking of songs made to tear me apart, oh Jesus Christ.
I wish the heaven had visiting hours.
So I made it pretty clear that I'm not the hugest fan of Ed Sheeran, but I'm gonna go ahead and put aside these reservations because this here is something pretty special. Simply put, it's a song that Sheeran wrote in honor of his late friend, and it is both a loving tribute to his companion and a portrait of his own grieving process. The instrumental is light and tender. There's the occasional orchestral swell, but for the most part, it gives Sheeran center stage, allowing him the room to air out his deepest feelings.
So much has changed since you've been.
Sheeran mulls over the thought of entering heaven during visiting hours to talk to his friend, give him life updates, and just chat like they used to. The concept is a tad trite, but the song presents it as a crucial bridge between the mourning of a loved one and one's eventual moving on, because we all must move on.
But I know what they'd say, that it's for the best. So I will live life the way you taught me.
The final stretch is where he acknowledges this as a fantasy, because of course it is. Instead of bargaining for the impossible then, he takes comfort in the fact that he can continue his friend's legacy in the living world, as a duty of sorts. And it's a precious thing to reach this specific stage, to know that a future beyond this loss can exist. I myself have lost people very dear to me, and this song conjures up those very raw emotions I felt in those hardest moments when all I wanted was to have them within arm's reach again. But accepting death is very much a part of life, and if dreaming up these fantastical scenarios better eases one way toward that crucial end goal, well, more power to us all, for sure. Fuck it. Let me make one thing clear real quick. I very much struggle with prog metal. It's just a thing. Moreover, well, this is quite the behemoth. A 24-minute epic worthy of an entire video all its own, and I'm not the one to do it. In short, this segment feels like a fool's errand. But goddammit, I'm gonna try.
A doctor sitting next to me. He asked me.
Octavarium is quite the feat, it being a multi-movement song revolving through several styles and years to portray the narrative of a speaker who, looking back on the life he's lived, wonders if his accomplishments have ultimately been worth the strife. In our younger years, we are full of youthful energy and wild ideas about our future. And then we grow up. And with the weight of the actual reality on our shoulders, we start to deeply contemplate if these ambitious ideas are even that fulfilling at all. Thus, he remains hungry for the goodness promised with existence, only now with so many fewer years left to capture. It's the deep contradiction of life. Youth is wasted on the young, and likewise is wisdom for the old. And Octavarium captures this philosophical musing with such intricacy, both in its profound storytelling and its sprawling instrumental. What's also so impressive is just how tight the song is. It really makes excellent use of every moment of its length, while navigating from the mournful first half to the uptempo middle bits, to the thrilling aggression of its climax, all so expertly. And through it all, the song emphasizes the cyclical nature of all things, how we trudge through the trials of life to stave off our nagging mental hunger, only to end with the tapestry of years behind us, and the hunger still remaining. And yet, there's still so much more I haven't even tapped into here. I've dug through enough interpretations to conclude that, well, this is one for the Dream Theater fans. And while I'm not a Dream Theater fan, I'm also so very much out of my element here. Despite that, it's a stellar composition through and through. I know a masterpiece when I hear one, and this is right there for sure. Yeah, you know, I'm not creative at all, so let's just throw this one here as well. Am I an absolute tool for putting the two lengthy prog metal songs alongside each other? Yeah, probably. Although I promise that this segment won't be quite as long as the last one, partially because Forget Not is half of Octavarium's length. See? Only 12 minutes, guys. Seriously though, I also just enjoy this song for a lot of similar reasons as Octavarium. It's very grand, and develops in ways that emphasize its heady emotional core through an array of searing instrumentation. But distinct to Forget Not is that it demonstrates some of the just plain coolest consistent build-up across this whole video. We get a lone guitar, soon accompanied by some soft percussion, and then some violin, which, yeah, the string section here is absolutely majestic, giving the track such a mournful personality that absolutely grips me. And from here, it simply constructs itself along this foundation, soon followed by the tremendous power of these layered vocals. It's an excellent emotional backdrop for sure. And it's a song that pays homage to those we have lost in our lives. We witness in real time the shifting from such somber, mournful moods to what I could only describe as a power stance, a declaration to continue into the living world with a head full of memories and deep intent to honor the dead for who they once were. To end, this is one of my favorite discoveries off this whole list, and I'm grateful to have found it.
Thought I almost died in my dream again.
I'm not completely positive that this is my favorite The Weeknd song. Actually, wait, this isn't even my favorite song off After Hours. But in any case, it does give the impression that this is Abel's magnum opus, or at the very least, a great summation of his career up till this point. song depicted his character as a desperate, drug-addicted hedonist who is absolutely incapable of being a decent partner to any woman, and, well, here as well. The beat is dark and just revolting, with an empty vastness that allows his wails to echo along the walls of his decrepit mansion. Plus, the track also feels large, especially with how the aforementioned beat swells at the second verse. A new melody emerges, but The Weeknd stays trapped in his dreamlike, nay, delusional state, wherein he desperately croons to his ex-lover to return to him, offering nothing in return but empty sex and emptier promises. I will admit that this works the best as a centerpiece to the album of its namesake, as a glorious resolution to that narrative of emotional spiral. Nonetheless, it's also a strong enough track on its own to recommend to anyone willing to wallow in this dense depravity for just a bit of time. Yeah, let's just get this one out of the way as well.
1, 2, 3. If you close the door, the night could last forever.
It's the After Hours double feature. Go figure. Anyway, it's very funny that this is the first time I cover the Velvet Underground on my channel, because this is very much not like any other Velvet song out there. Specifically in its sound, and the total lack of Lou Reed at vocals, who is replaced instead with drummer Maureen Tucker.
People are dancing and they're having such fun. I wish it could happen to me.
On the face of it, it's an adorable, minimal twee folk number with a bouncy melody that is instantly so heartwarming. It's cute and tender, sure, but dig a little deeper and you'll also see it's incredibly sad. We're thrown into the perspective of a loner, someone who sees the vibrant, busy lives of others happening all around them, and yet has no similar excitement herself. She sings lines such as, "I wish it could happen to me," and there's a really compelling thread of desire there. It's a life she very much wishes to attain, as drawn away from the world as she is.
Stand disarrayed, oh, but people look well in the dark.
And it's a hushed, forlorn ode to loneliness, all that more emphasized by Tucker, who is so relatable in her timidity. And as an introvert who also very much desires personal connections with others, yeah, this one strikes a nerve, not gonna lie. It's likely one of the more understated tunes from the Underground's body of work, but it also might be one of the most quietly beloved, and it's not hard at all to see why. It's just lovely. So, quick little story. Back when I was in college, I was part of this music sharing community on a little site called Turntable FM. Some of y'all might have heard of it. It was such a fun way to trade songs with a bunch of like-minded people, and I discovered so much great music, while also creating some really special bonds along the way. The story does end sadly, as Turntable FM shut its doors way back in 2013. As a result, I and many others had lost contact with pretty much everyone there. People I've spent multiple times a week communicating with, now gone from my life, just like that. Lost to a digital sea of sorts, with no real way of finding them again. These are memories I kinda pushed to the back of my brain for a while, until a certain song came around and compelled them all to come flooding back again.
Thank you. I'll say goodbye soon.
It's taken me quite a while to get to this one, yeah. It's the closing track to Porter Robinson's album World, and a ceremonial end to an era in more ways than one, it turns out. Reportedly, this is Robinson's mournful ode to the closure of various MMOs in his life, and frankly, I think that's really beautiful. I'd argue that virtually none of us have never had the experience of leaving a community marked by those desperate attempts to keep in touch with folks you've grown especially close to. But when it's a community full of people who seem to exist only within these parameters, who likely don't even use their real name, the act of these spaces closing forever feels like death, an apocalypse even. And as the main melody slowly disintegrates with the passing of time, we can almost envision these spaces fading like dust. It's a unique strain of ever-grasping sadness that Robinson really nails here. Those connections you absolutely took for granted at the time, now suddenly severed beyond repair, and there's nothing you can do to get them back. At the same time though, I also read the song as a celebration of these brief blips of time these connections were made in the first place. All of the good times, the friendship that is as genuine as if they were sitting right beside you. I actually found a video someone captured of the last few minutes of Turntable FM, and even though this was an entirely separate community I had no link to, I found myself getting a little misty-eyed as I watched. All things must come to an end eventually. But it's pretty cool that they happened in the first place, ain't it? Separate from all this even, Goodbye to a World works as a great statement of closure for damn near any major life change that comes around. It's all the bittersweet, sad feelings coalesce with all the joy in just a few short minutes. And that alone is something really special. You know a list of songs is really damn good when this one almost misses the top third. But it's also a song that has been talked about by damn near everyone at this point. Hell, even I reviewed it way back in a really old video. It's widely considered to be one of the best pop hits of the last decade, and yeah, it very much is.
But I hear sounds in my mind.
It's interesting looking back on this song now, seeing how Lorde's matured songwriting on melodrama has pretty much defined her artistry now. And also, yes, I can finally see where all the comparisons to Olivia Rodrigo's Vampire come from. Of course, these songs sound nothing like each other at all, but they also represent each woman's emotional state in the wake of their breakups, each with their own flavor of heartbroken and discontent.
Well, those rumors, they have big teeth. Oh, they bite you.
But while Rodrigo's song takes the approach of bitterness, latching out of this man any which way she can, Lorde looks much more inward. Sure, she takes a few jabs in his direction, but mostly yearns for the eventual growth that comes from heartbreak, and enlightenment from the shambles.
I wish I could get my things and just let go. I'm waiting for it, that green light.
She's still consumed with memories of her ex, but she knows that there will be a time when this is no longer the case. And it's the journey of growth this song undertakes within its time frame that seals the deal for me personally. From the spiteful open letter poetry of that opener, all the way to the euphoric thrill of the climax, signaling an approach into life's next stage, which she welcomes with open arms. That's the kind of progress we all love to see. Let this next song be a lesson to always look for music hiding in the deepest fringes of the scene, because I doubt I'd ever get a chance to listen to this one otherwise. I have a bit of a soft spot for all the plainly weird tracks that come across my radar in these videos. Fiery Furnaces and Hakushi Hasegawa in my last subspecial were real treats, even though they were both Liz picks. And yeah, despite this artist having fewer than 400 monthly listeners, this was voted in. That's so cool. Anyway, yeah, I don't have a lot of information on this artist, other than they were a Japanese idol group that disbanded in August of last year, which is kind of a shame because there's very little I could say that really sounds like this. The pop structure is all here, it's tremendously bouncy, but all this is obscured by the glitches and slams of its overlying production. This certainly belongs in the happy song school of production, jamming together all these abrasive parts and movements that nonetheless have an undeniable musicality. It's a beauty that you often have to dig out of its uber-industrial atmosphere, but the beauty remains nonetheless. It's such a scattered, overwhelmingly manic little song, with a gorgeous thread cutting through it all, reminding me of that ever-present possibility for light and darkness, ugliness and beauty to coexist in the same space and create something different out of the pieces it leaves behind. It's an absolute ride in every sense of the word, and I really hope more of y'all will take this trip for yourselves as well. See, I told you I don't hate electronic music.
But there's something out there.
I feel like eventually I'm going to review every track from Random Access Memories in these videos. I already got to talk about one of my all-timers, and that ruled. I don't love this one quite as much, but yeah, as a closing track for the record, this absolutely kills. This track is purely instrumental, and it's pretty much all build-up, like a rocket ship booting up its engines and preparing for the grand liftoff. And it sounds so good. That organ riff carries the track's grandiosity with a fantastic melody, followed by the harsher clash of cymbals later on, all propelled by this blanket of rolling synths and a strange, ever-rising noise that heightens the tension so much I can barely stand it. The context of the title refers to extraterrestrial life, and we have a whole intro that more or less alludes to this. Ultimately though, it all comes down to the phenomenal textures here. There's not a single part of this that feels aimless or unfocused, and every second is so incredibly tight. Exactly what great electronic music should sound and feel like. I love this a lot. Listening to this now makes me sad that their most recent album wasn't better, but yeah, let's think positively. I've been re-listening to Joy as an Act of Resistance a lot lately, and man is that album a moment. Furious instrumentation and rampant political lyrics given to us by way of some of the sharpest post-punk tunes of the last decade. It is so great. And that opener is something else, really. Colossus begins as this brooding outlook on how the weight of reality has weighed down on Idol's leader Joe Talbot. He carves out this dissonant persona, defined by aspects such as substance abuse and his queer identity, and it is intense. And Colossus is the perfect name for the song, with the spare guitar groove marching along with the force of 2 tons of lead, and drums that pierce the air, disrupting the piece any which way it can. Goes and it goes and it goes. Oh, how the world turns, how days become years, and the person whom we never planned to be eventually arrives to stare back at us in the mirror. And yet it's only a matter of time before the slow crawl makes way for the real, true power to come forward. The second part is a tremendous call for Talbot to reclaim his identity, free from the rejection of the world, assuming his stance, a symbolic spit in the face to a society that expects him to live up to the standards of his father. And we got the best line of this entire subscriber special, too. Extremely true, bestie. Don't worry, guys, I'm back in my Kate Bush Enjoyer era. It's about time I get an opportunity to talk about the dreaming on this series. Feels like a long time coming, as this was the album that introduced me to Kate Bush herself. Moreover, Suspended in Gaffa was one of the first songs I heard from her, period, and boy, what an impression it left. The playful Baroque pop instrumental, imbued with elements of classical music, absolutely rules. Moreover, well, Bush is one of the most expressive performers in all of recorded music, and here, her eccentric vocals flow to this track like water. It's so fun. And it's clear that even here, in her early 20s, she was an incredible wordsmith. Across her dense poetry and a sea of biblical references, she touches upon the anxiety of witnessing God, saddled with the promise that this may never be achieved again, unless one tries with all their might to attain this enlightenment into the afterlife. Honestly though, I feel compelled to place it into a context that feels more tangible to me. Perhaps it is, instead, about a woman's place in the world, under a patriarchal hold that suspends her indefinitely, and how she must try that much harder to free herself from its clutches. Maybe? Well, in any case, this interpretation makes sense to me, and only further highlights the mastery that is Kate Bush. Yes, sirree. I confess, I've been thoroughly obsessed with this next song the entire time making this video.
The universe unfolds.
Could you blame me? I don't know where Clarence Clarity came from, but I do know that this is unbelievably funky. And also from 2014, even though it still sounds so cutting edge to this day. I'm forced to believe that Clarence Clarity is an all-powerful, energy-bending god from the future, sent back in time to give us his blessing. That's the only explanation that makes sense to me. In all seriousness though, I am just fascinated. This sounds as if Prince had produced a track for Animal Collective, a messy yet pleasing amalgamation of synth squelches and twinkles, set alongside a terrific groove, and a strutting crooner pulled from some 90s boy band no one's heard of. It's the encapsulation of grind dancing at a loud, sweaty club, all while the demons linger at the back of your mind and speak your most unsavory thoughts back at you. A mental breakdown type beat. It's just insane. The kind of song that has a new trick up its sleeve in any direction you turn. And with the pop music scene in absolute shambles these days, music like this has been absolutely what I most crave lately. I have a couple of these every sub-special, so here's this one. The one I tell you to just ignore everything I'm saying and just listen for yourself. Make your own experience from this one. It's that type of fun. Emo kids for life, y'all.
The streets are all violence with
Yeah, see, now we're getting to the songs I fully obsessed over during my listening sessions. But even before that, well, I already knew that this one had to make it in, even if by brute force. Nightmare of You falls in a lot of the same tradition of the Fall Out Boy, My Chemical Romance school of emo, but in this case, at least, they're much more, well, poppier. We're taking fewer cues from 90s pop punk and 70s glam rock, and instead dipping our toes into 80s new wave. You hear it in that punchy bass groove, the melodic guitar strums, and the swaggering delivery of this vocalist. And can I just say, this chorus is an absolute killer.
oh my God.
Huge fan of that hook, Jesus. And yeah, despite the strong pop energy, it's also surprisingly chill. It floats and flutters along this rhythm, and is such an easy song to grasp and hold on to. It's got that kind of unbreakable charm you simply don't hear too often, and it rides it all the way into the end.
And I keep fixing every habit that I break.
I mean, just listen to this guy, singing with the bloodiest bleeding heart imaginable, while also being incredibly playful. It's a weird vibe, but I super dig it. I think I finally nailed it. This is a Cure song. Specifically, a post-disintegration, Friday I'm in Love era of The Cure.
Just know you're still in my heart.
Like, this part here is just so Robert Smith, it's insane. Anyway, this one strokes a specific part of my brain so well, and I love it a whole lot. Yeah, so this is Ariana Grande's best song for sure. I'm not hearing any argument to the contrary. I've listened to every one of her albums at least a couple times at this point, including the one she just came out with, and she just hasn't topped this one. Honestly, I'm not too sure she ever will. It's a thick and powerful funk groove, and Ariana herself is so sexy, yet also confident and powerful. Her vocal control alone is just ridiculous. I do admire the mellower, more mature angle she's been taking on in recent times, but dear lord do I miss the era where she would just give her absolute all. Because I absolutely know she can. This song is proof enough of this. Every jazzy note and explosive chord is placed exactly where it should be. The structuring is so precise and glorious. It actually makes no sense how this has never been pushed as a single, as it screams obvious hit all over its face, and is a rare catchy pop tune I've never gotten sick of through overplay. Maybe I'll eat my words later once the TikTok kids force this into mass prominence, which I'm sure will happen eventually. But for now, I'll stay grooving along to these sick hooks, yeah. Alright, so this is a song that has fascinated me for many years, and I'm so glad I get to talk about it now.
Dear God, hope you got the letter and I pray you can make it better.
XTC are absolute masters at churning out some truly great pop songs with varying degrees of color and influential vibrancy. There's such a distinct voice in their field of new wave, even if they never really got a ton of recognition. But Dear God is an absolute standout, because of course it is. The song skips along a similarly jaunty melody as much of their early songs, but it's also significantly darker, led by some lonely guitar strums and a child's voice singing directly to God. This child has been doing what they were taught. They see injustice and respond by praying for a better world. And surely God can solve these problems, right? Then the speaker shifts to a much more disillusioned adult, one who has now witnessed years of injustice with no end to be found. The voice is also sarcastic and bitter now that we've learned that, indeed, these are the problems that cannot be solved through prayer. But I must step back and clarify that this isn't really a song about God, or any theism in general. Rather, it uses a storytelling device to highlight conflict in the world as a whole. For it is ultimately human beings themselves that are the source of all the world's problems, from political conflict to starvation to unjust death. The most crucial part of the song, then, is that final verse, which mercilessly unfurls this very thesis. Death and destruction can never just simply be prayed away. The speaker rejects the thought of staying passive, and refuting this apathetic god intertwining with the potential non-existence may in fact be the first step in doing so. It's a really complicated type of song, but I deeply admire when pop songs can tackle such complex topics with tact and creativity, and this is one of the shining examples of this. Great stuff. As I've said before, I do try to listen to each song in my subscriber specials at least a dozen times, just so I can feel like I can get an accurate, detailed read on the songs as I talk about them. With that said, I hope y'all can understand that I didn't really feel any need to give this many re-listens. I mean, I've known this song ever since I was 7 years old. I could argue that it is one of the most important songs that ever got me into music in the first place. As such, I know every note, every vocal run of this song like the back of my hand. I know the parts where the bass slaps are amplified, I know where the music swells and dips, and so forth. Now, I did re-listen a few times as a refresher, and, well, yeah, it's really good. It's so apparent from even this very young age that Britney would be such an earth-shaking icon. She's just so good. As is Max Martin, whose production work would set the blueprint for the 2 generations of pop artists to follow. Anyway, this is all to say that, yes, Baby One More Time by Britney Spears is damn great. I totally agree with the star status, as I should, so let's move on. Here's your seasonal reminder to listen to the First Glass Beach album if you somehow still haven't yet. On that note, it's just so interesting how I've now covered 3 songs from this record, and none of them sound remotely alike. Instead of the loud rumbling angst of Glass Beach or the tender jazziness of Bedroom Community, Dallas gives us big, sprawling blankets of warm ambience. And while Dallas may not be my favorite track on the album, it's the one I think I have the most affection toward. This song contains a similar subtext regarding the uncertainty of existing as a queer and trans person in an ever-hostile world, but with much more tender, intimate presentation. It is, to me, an incredibly precise representation of memories in the way they are often perceived, half-formed, imprecise, composed of feelings of both loving nostalgia and painful regret. Not to harp on a labored point, but in my lingering frustration over their second album, I turned to songs like Dallas to remind myself of the tremendous potential for emotional depth this band can pull off so well. And it remains the one deep cut I gladly continue to hold close to my heart. It's damn beautiful. In contrast to Creedence Clearwater Revival's better-known swamp rock numbers of the 60s, Have You Ever Seen the Rain draws it all back to temperate acoustics and a mid-tempo rhythm, and the results are absolute gold. There's something just so simple, comforting, and timeless about this one song, like a warm hug from a friend with whom you can trust with all your secrets and deepest worries. John Fogerty's signature rasp of a voice gives the band's harder rockin' cuts that grit and edge so essential to their appeal. But here, okay, well, he doesn't sound all that different, but there's a whole new hue present, one that feels so much more weathered and worn down by continued struggle. The true reading of the lyrics highlights tensions between the band, but also it's an open enough arrangement that this could represent a general sense of unease familiar to so many people. And this alone is probably why the song has resonated for so many. For me personally, it's a gentle reminder that cycles of depression are exactly that, cyclical. We go through these low periods, but eventually they end if you can just wait through the rain. The moment that backing organ pops in during the second chorus, man, get me in a certain mood and that second will bring me to tears. It's so gorgeously heart-wrenching. As is the entire rest of the song, really. God damn. Liz's infatuation with Sophistopop strikes again. to be fair, sophistopop is one of the all-time prettiest genres to exist, so damn near anything that fits the sound will grab onto my emotions so well. Yet, even with these expectations, Headlights on the Parade stands so high above so many. Through its steady rhythm, we get an array of string sounds and piano gestures that only build in intensity over time. It is absolutely obsessed with these textures, and honestly, same. For me, this always felt like a narrative about a relationship on the rocks, and the speaker's optimistic determination to persevere despite their apprehensions. Headlights on the parade light their way through the uncertain, foggy future. The burning candle of love ensures that all can be withstood as long as their love stays strong. But sometimes, love can't stay strong. Sometimes two people are incompatible, sometimes you grow apart, and life simply has different plans for the both of you. And it's right there when this song about the beauty of an everlasting romance becomes one of irreparable tragedy, and that's just really sad. Touchingly so. It's not hard to see how the Blue Nile have been considered among the greatest artists in the sophistopop scene, and this is among their very best for sure. Now let's vote in some prefab sprout while we're at it. Okay, for this next segment, I'd like to place a content warning for conversations on gun violence and suicide, particularly related to children. If this is a topic that's upsetting for you, please head over to this timestamp to skip. Take care of yourselves, y'all. And with that said, yeah, it was only a matter of time before I had to address this one. Above everything else, Jeremy is an excellent sounding song. The arrangements are just stunning, and it's got some of the best production work in any song I've heard from this era of grunge. Otherwise, well, let's just jump right into this.
At home, drawing pictures of mountain tops with him on.
It speaks multitudes as to how much the song has resonated into the present day, not only because the sound has just held up that well, but also because the topic of gun violence in schools is, well, way more present than ever before. The band paints this portrait of a young boy, not unlike many young boys across the country, disposed by his family, peers, and authorities all around him, unleashing his tension through violent drawings and, well, actual violence toward those who approach him. The type of young kid who cycles through each day taking life's punches until one day he finally speaks up in class, and then never again. It's a tricky task to present a situation like this and do so in a humanizing manner. In reviewing this one, I'm reminded of King Park by La Dispute, namely in its speaker who spends the whole song grappling for an understanding of such a senseless situation, only to arrive at a dead end with no answers at all. The speaker in Jeremy makes a similar plea for understanding, except no wait, he really doesn't. The cloud of distress that hangs over him after the event is far too great to amount to more than flashes of memories. So he instead tries to forget any of this happened in the first place, tries to erase the unspeakable trauma of witnessing a death so violent, just so we can all move on with our days as if this never happened. But, well, I probably don't need to tell you that such a task is completely futile. The presence of Jeremy is one that will always remain in the minds of those who knew him, those who were around to witness it all. It's a hard pill to swallow. The song itself drags on, struggling to reach a satisfying conclusion, like a constant reminder of what had occurred, all augmented by the excruciating wails of frontman Eddie Vedder. And ultimately, we've got the same conclusion as in King Park. There's no moral lesson to learn, no way to reason out of the senselessness. Just another indication of this cruel world, a black hole that continues to suck us further into the darkness. All we can do at this point is reckon with this world's injustices and try to make something better from the aftermath. We've all got to make it through this world somehow.
White picket fence, a quiet street.
Do yourselves a favor and give a listen to Emily Scott Robinson's American Siren. That is all. Anyway, out of this array of touching, terrifically humanizing works of Americana, Let 'Em Burn is one that's always stood out the most for me. It's a pretty bare-bones piano ballad at its face, and yet the narrative on display here is anything but quiet.
I'm on the edge of something wild, on the edge of something free.
Through her deeply emotive storytelling, Robinson grants us this imagery of white picket fences surrounding this picture-perfect, God-endearing family. And yet from the perspective of the centerpiece wife and mother here, it's all a facade. She spent her whole life working to be a perfect woman, only to sit back and realize that she was building her own cage this whole time.
What if desire is a gift and not a sin?
It's absolutely heartbreaking and reminds me of how women throughout generations have been expected to play such traditional roles for their society, and for many, this is simply not satisfying. And it can hurt in that deeply existential way. Is this really all there is? How can one function as a human being in this very real state of unhappiness?
Yes, all the things I swore I'd be, I let 'em all burn.
And yet there's also a power trembling beneath the song, and it's all captured in Robinson's delivery. Her voice absolutely cuts like a knife, and at the climax where the stony demeanor chips ever so slightly at the edges, that kind of just makes the whole song for me, honestly. Loads of respect for her vocalizing these discomforting desires so beautifully here. She absolutely nails it. It is now time to redeem myself. I promise you all, I'm not just some weird hater.
Million miles away.
One of my most accidentally contentious placements in my last subscriber special was placing Rope by Foo Fighters in the bottom 10. This is a Foo Fighters song from the same album, and as you can tell, this is not in the bottom 10. And my difference of reaction is actually not all that complicated to parse. I simply tend to gravitate more towards songs with big emotions. And god damn is this one a doozy.
Can't you see I've waited long enough? Where do I begin?
Yeah, see, the older I get, the more that these sort of songs really get to me. Here, we find our speaker at a transitory period, coming off a low point in their life with the fire in their heart to make a better life for themselves. They're not walking, they're learning to walk. It's a process, and it's never an easy one.
Think I found my place. Can't you feel it?
And god damn it, man, it's this desire for personal reinvention that really gets to me. The foolhardy hunger to put the baggage of the past far behind and emerge out the other end as someone we can actually be proud of. But this isn't just any speaker formalizing this desire. This is Dave Grohl. And, okay, I try not to bring up the artist's personal life unless it's absolutely necessary. But for me at least, it's impossible to listen to the song and not place it in the aftermath of Kurt Cobain's death. And since the passing of drummer Taylor Hawkins, dear lord does it hit that much harder. And yet, it's all about the bridge, which is one of Foo Fighters' finest moments, period. It's defiant in the face of failure, triumphant over the life lived, but also so deeply, crushingly sad. I never wanna die. Dear lord, that's heavy. The song is, to me, the sonic encapsulation of running up a steep hill. You're part of the way up, there's so much more left to go, and you're so tired you feel like your legs will give out at any moment. Yet you keep going. What else are you gonna do? Go all the way back down? That ain't an option, buddy. And it's also a fine reminder of the strength of the human mind and spirit. A strength that knows absolutely no bounds. You can do anything you set your mind to. All you gotta do is take that first step forward. The feels aren't stopping anytime soon, folks, but this time we can blame my patrons. Blood is, above all, a unifying force. It forms uncrushable bonds. It is solidarity, community, and it reminds us that we are ultimately more alike than we are different. But blood also boils and curdles with the hatred possessed by those who allow these differences to take legitimacy, who discriminate against others based on imaginary forces and feel justified to lash out on defense. We don't know one thing about our blood, and that scares us.
My brother's blood boils in my arms.
Brother's Blood begins as a dreamy shuffle of a tune, a bit country rock in nature, calm and collected. That is, until Kevin Devine comes forward and presents us with imagery of pummeling violence that shifts the mood so very quickly. And yeah, it is a song about humanity's hatred for one another, the type that's reverberated through the centuries. Specifically, it's a song about confusion over such hatred, how we are so willing to tear each other apart for no reason at all. It's an extremely passionate track that pins its heart on its sleeve for all to see as it desperately grasps for reasonings, a point of connection, a known origin to that which has torn us apart for so long. And yet there is no sound answer for any of this. Not for most of us, anyway. These seeds of frustration over so many dead ends are planted, and the music acts accordingly. This all grows to a hot, simmering anger, an anger over the lives ruined and lost, over such futility, over its place as an unsolvable inevitability of life. And God, is this climax an absolute monster. It truly does feel like it's all ready to explode at any second from the enormity of this turmoil. And, well, it does. With such a mighty emotional thrust, it reaches its natural conclusion, registering as a wild, tuneless wall of noise, transcribing the pure unspeakability of these tangled thoughts into a dense avalanche. It's absolutely breathtaking, painfully relevant, and just spectacular. Y'all should know by now, I'm taking any excuse to get a little Tom Waits in my video.
Well, the Iceman's mule is parked out.
A Little Rain by Tom Waits comes from Bone Machine, the same album as Going Out West, which, if you need a reminder, sounds like this. Yeah, going into one of Waits' wildest, darkest albums, only to be taken off guard by this low-key, country-tinged piano ballad a few tracks in, sure is something. Though it sure sounds exquisite, with the spare, calming production combining those creaky chords with the weeping guitar backing that always makes my heart swell.
Oh, the dancing on the roof, and the ceiling's coming down.
And then there's Tom Waits himself, who does a standard Tom Waits thing of presenting this collection of nameless individuals under less than privileged circumstances, like a man with missing fingers who, nonetheless, continues to play his guitar. And this situation certainly illuminates the line around which this song hinges.
And a little rain never hurt no one.
Seeing the rain come down on a sunny day is a common occurrence for these folks, but they live through it because, well, that's life. And this point is further focused by opening to us the grander theme of purpose, the importance of leaving one's mark on the world, however small, while we're still around to feel it spin. Because what's life for, if not for living, in spite of the risks?
She was 15 years old, and she'd never seen.
And it's the third verse that really makes this last point really resonate. An anecdote about a young girl running away from home. Apparently, Waits drew inspiration from a real-life story about a teenage runaway's murder. Pretty morbid, sure, but I like to think that this was his attempt to draw some power from such tragic circumstances, emphasizing the very point she took a leap for her own self, and humanizing her beyond her death. For none of us ever really know when it's our time, so why not take our own journey? This man really knows how to speak to me for sure. I love this. Okay, I hope this next one can be a bit of a relief from the past few entries, because, honestly, this song just kinda rocks.
Yes, this is the campaign slithered entrails in the cargo bay.
I must repeat, this song rips. And I'd honestly love to just leave it at that. I mean, you can hear it, right? The rough, vibrant energy that instantly brings to mind those precious moments at rock shows when the whole crowd gets involved in the madness of the music because it's just way too overwhelming not to. That staccato guitar rhythm that makes up the core of this song, twisting and turning along to this rhythm, it all awakens something deeply feral in me in ways few other songs could, and that's just the coolest thing. It's also such a fluid song, one where not a single verse sounds like any previous, all of them connected together by that chorus that grabs you by the shoulders and demands you belt along. This really is the Love Shack of post-hardcore, ain't it? Seriously though, these hooks and melodies work so seamlessly against the rest of the instrumentals, including the wild thrash of these vocals. But it's also never weighed down by such. It never feels like a forced earworm, but it is a powerful one. It's uninhibited, flailing, and totally fun, just as the best post-hardcore should be. And that's kind of the extent of it, really. I discovered this song right when I was getting into some harder rock and punk genres, and it stayed such a preciously catchy little tune all the way to the present. What does any of it mean? I don't know, beats me. I just want to rock out, man. Again, I'm not a weird hater. I'm just weird. Here's hoping this makes up for Comfortably Numb. Okay, see, this is what I'm talking about. Full guitars, beautiful melodies, intricate lyrics that read like poetry, big moods and ideas captured in such simplicity. Yes, this is what Pink Floyd were always the best at.
So you think you could tell?
It's an uncomplicated song, but also very lovely, carrying itself with such a gentle character, like a lone sailboat resting along a quiet sea, only slightly propelled by the occasional breeze. And as such, the lyrics paint a grand picture of the tides of life, inevitable yet unforgiving, setting their course through the years.
Did they get you to train your heroes for ghosts?
The song is often interpreted within the context of former Pink Floyd leader Syd Barrett's departure from the group, but I've often read it along some broader strokes. Simply put, the song captures that familiar moment when you've realized that the decisions you made in life were all at the behest of someone else, and the fear that comes with the possibility that perhaps it's all wrong. Where Let 'Em Burn opens the narrative up to the aftermath, here it's a summation of the sense that no aftermath seems to exist, only here and now.
How I wish you were here.
The chorus offers a vastly nostalgic look back at a much more innocent outlook that can never be returned to. All we can do is make the same mistakes again and again until we somehow get it right, whenever that happens. If it'll happen. It's a beautiful song, one all that more elevated by this heavenly combination of guitars and horns baked within the sound. And God, is David Gilmour's smooth, comforting vocals just that much more appealing to me personally. For a song that's nearly 50 years old at this point, its ideas only continue to spring true, and it's one that has meant more and more to me with every year that passes through my sales. I love it a lot. Time for the last patron pick, and okay, this is just cheating.
The meadowlark and the chimchuree and the sparrow.
Not only is Joanna Newsom just a brilliant harpist with such a unique voice, but she makes music that simply sounds like nothing else in this world. Emily might realistically be one of the greatest songs of all time. It's some absolutely beautiful, fluid poetry sent to 12 minutes of transcendental music one can get totally lost in, like a vast forest with no edge in sight. And yet, as brilliant as it is, the song only really begins to blossom once you take a long, hard look at these lyrics, which are way more dense and meaningful than this short segment will allow, but I'll try my best. One of the primary themes of Newsom's album Yeast is loss and the struggle that comes with grieving, and Emily presents this theme within the context of the bond shared between her and her sister of the title's namesake. The opening represents the innocence of their childhood days as they engage with the nature all around them. But then this is torn apart by the natural passing of years and traumatic experiences that ultimately tear them apart.
The whole world stopped to hear you holler.
The The way the music mirrors all these different transitions is just so lovely. The lush strings carry a beautiful youthfulness at the start, then slowing to a weeping crawl in the onset of life's tragedies. And along this personal storytelling, Newsom muses on our own existential standings on this world, with meteorites and meteoroids as representations of the brief but striking glimmer of resonance we bring in our lives.
Blossoms all have fallen, and the pollen.
By the final third of the song, a lot of time has passed. The tranquil utopia that made up the introduction is long gone, and we can never return. And yet what has not changed is Joanna's fascination with nature, and as she gazes up at the stars just as she did when she was young, she remarks on the few signs of stability that remains in her ever unstable life. The stillness of the sky, nature itself, and that unbreakable attachment to her sister.
And it is told the meteorite is the source of the light, and the needy is just what we see.
And with the fascination over the miracle of life gleaming in her, as bright as the night stars, it shows that maybe we can still hold on to some glimmers of our childhood innocence after all. Again, I must emphasize that I've only just begun to scratch the surface. Honestly, just listen to all 12 minutes yourself. It'll be the quickest 12 minutes you'll ever spend in your life, and some of the most rewarding, for sure. And here we are again with another one of these. A song I've loved since I was a kid and can comfortably rank up this high off of catchiness and little else. Lately though, well, I've been getting a lot more into such propulsive pop punk as Jeff Rosenstock, Glass Beach, and Pup, and listening to Flagpole Sitta now, well, it all makes sense. And yet, along with being a ridiculously chantable bit of pop rock that lies close to radio-friendly pop fluff, it's also searingly critical about the commodification of the so-called scene. "I'm not sick, but I'm not well" is a line that cuts through multiple generations, shedding a light on the pervading ennui accompanied with being a member of the counterculture. You are possessed with the knowledge that there is evil in the society, and yet it's not an evil that you yourself are inconvenienced by much. As such, how much authenticity can really come from a movement where everyone seems to be doing quite alright for themselves? How do we self-justify that the art we're making is good and loyal, when at the core of it, the entire scene may just be superficial itself? Even this very song is so unserious, propped up by innuendo, ironic wordplay, and barbershop melodies.
I wanna publish scenes and rage against machines.
And yet, in spite of the incessant Gen X-isms of its energy, it really thrives. It's a song about existing within a dying movement, being sold off for parts, and still trying to find a reason to persist in spite of it all. In case you haven't been paying attention, yeah, I'm all about these kinds of themes in music. That's just life, you know? And at the end of the day, it's also a hell of a jam. Absolutely cannot resist singing along, even to this day. If nothing else, it's more than likely one of the greatest pop punk songs of all time, and sometimes that's just fine enough. I'm just gonna be blunt about this one. Few songs within the endless ocean of 80s dance music really ever speak to me quite like this one. First and foremost, the synths in Small Town Boy perfectly capture the loneliness of a nighttime walk, or the hot, sweaty nightclub air, or the feeling of being trapped in your own mind, with nothing but your thoughts to keep you company. There's nothing explicit in the song to draw it directly to the gay male experience, but man, you can just feel it. It's all there. These descriptions of the aching pain and alienation in the midst of an upbringing that tosses you aside for your differences, yeah, there's some deep resonance in this one. And thus, we get the track's driving narrative, that decision to run far away from an environment that can eat us up from the inside out. Physical, psychological, spiritual violence. It's all violence, and it's time to get the hell away. In a society that instructs men to hide their pain and confusion away from the world, this refrain is goddamn revolutionary, and all the more powerful coming from the mouth of Jimmy Somerville, whose androgynous voice straddles the line between feathery effeminacy and soulful diva candor. I just love this song so much. I love dancing to it, I love vibing to it, and mulling upon its significance for many queer folks, I could damn near cry about it. And And it certainly is significant. In a decade that had grown terribly hostile toward a vulnerable community watching so many loved ones die of a horrible illness, it was the shot of unbreakable empathy sorely needed in the day. And in an age where we're seeing so much of this hostility rear its ugly head yet again, it's one that has remained strikingly relevant and beautiful all the same. Y'all need to understand one thing. Nina is the absolute best. Aside from having one of the best voices in all of music, she was just a brilliant composer. I mean, who else could take a traditional African-American spiritual and warp it into a 10.5-minute vocal jazz masterpiece?
Will I run to the rock? Please hide me and run to the rock.
The content of Sinnerman highlights the titular sinner's attempts to escape the smiting hand of God on that faithful day of judgment. That feverish piano riff that makes up the backbone of the song is intense and ripping, and it reads to me like the elements tingling by way of these subhuman powers, disintegrating every living thing into the afterlife.
So I run to the river, it was boiling, I run to the sea, it was boiling.
And the subject moves frantically, so desperate to escape their retribution. But as the rocks and waters, and even God himself refuses to take his side, he has no place to turn except toward the devil itself, where his eternity of damnation awaits.
I cried, power, power.
At this point, I want to reiterate that I'm not a religious person by any means. But I am a lover of darkly mystical storytelling, and it just so happens that Christianity is chock full of these. So of course a fantastic performer such as Simone was gonna nail this one. And I just love this middle third, wherein all the instruments are slowly dropped, until all we can hear are the rhythmic hand claps, stomps, and some spare piano keys providing us the traces of melodic structure to persist. The result is pretty spooky, as if to say that hell is occupied, not by the roaring flames of myth, but by nothing at all. Only endless emptiness where each echo reverberates into the void for no one else to hear into all eternity. And of course, it all comes back around to the sinner man making one final plea to the God he has neglected so long, the one that he now so desperately needs to save him, if he can still be saved. His heaving cries of praise can be heard within Simone's own cries, which all continue until we're left basking in this climax of gospel glory. And goddamn if that ain't an ending, she's just way too good. This may not be quite an all-timer, but... Shout out to big emotional indie rock songs from the 2000s. Gotta be one of my favorite genders. Yeah, another subscriber special, another one of these sort of songs coming around into all-timers. Just like this one, and this one, and this one, and certainly this one. We'll get back to that last one in a sec. And like a number of these, Run falls in that category of songs I loved in high school and thus have a greater than average amount of affection for these days. And admittedly, that's mostly what it's writing off of here. I mean, yes, it's really good for certain. It rises and falls at all the right spots. It rides through this satisfying emotional undercurrent, and generally sounds very pleasant. Really big fan of how these delicate instrumentals float along the horizon of this track, only slightly poking their heads through when the vocalist eases his soft, mournful crooning for a second. But I mean, it's the chorus that really gets me.
Light up, as if you
This soft, timid environment grows to a wide, sweeping array of strings and guitar, and it absolutely soars. And it's a fair fit for the content, which find two people at the threshold of their breakup, the speaker taking in as much time as he can to say goodbye, and say goodbye forever.
have heart, my dear, we're bound to be.
He struggles to accept his conclusion, constantly looking for ways to compromise and assure his ex-partner, assure himself that a bit more time and effort will fix this mess. But their fate continues to linger around the corner. The traces of light grow dimmer, and the desperation grows that much more potent. which culminates to the natural conclusion of release. Guitars that push ahead of the dramatics, accentuated by layered strings of tragic enormity. This moment is where it becomes a stunning masterpiece that I've known and loved for years. And it's likely a big reason why Comforting Sound stuck with me as immediately as it did. Even to this day, I still view it as a much more layered redrafting of this song. And I know Run came after, that's beside the point. Anyway, for as lukewarm as I am about Snow Patrol as a whole, everyone gets one, man. And I could not think of a better one for these guys than this. This sure sounds like it'd be pretty good music for a trip. Born Slippy by Underworld is the kind of song that pulls you in right from the get-go. Those opening chords are so very cinematic, like light and dark dancing together, vying for attention under the deep, star-freckled night sky. And light and darkness itself can only exist if they coexist, working in tandem to amplify each other's strengths. And the track represents this well. We get the smoky gloom, the reverberating chords playing along some ambient washes, and Carl Hyde chanting a string of vocabulary, words pulled apart like contextless lines from some seedy movie script. But then the dance beat pounds in, the light, and the song becomes a head-nodding tune set to the pounding vibrancy of the bass. Taking in all this free stimulation is so intoxicating, and yet it's also incomplete, spare, with no true melody, and loose parts hanging off the edges. It's a dance song, sure, but one absent of the euphoria you'd expect from dance music, and that's a bit unsettling. While Hyde's poetry leaves much open to interpretation, he actually drew much inspiration from his own experience with alcoholism. And you can hear this in the bleak atmosphere, representing an addict's spiral into their dependency, with no way to turn, no closure in sight. And this spiral is a frighteningly casual one, showing how those of us who engage in these substances are constantly straddling that line between fun and danger. How we're all one drink, one smoke, one pill away from giving our lives away to forces beyond our control.
Shouting, lager, 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 shouting, lager, 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 shouting.
And the song itself embodies this danger, all told through these fragmented lyrics that only heighten the instability of the addicted mind, the basic gift of language now rendered incomprehensible. It's an examination of these darker impulses that so perfectly captures the thrill of the rush, as well as the uneasiness occupied within. All this rolled into one giant ball of stimulation, the satisfying and the scary, the light and the dark. It's hard for me to think of any other dance song that has fascinated me quite like this has. The truth is, I've heard little else quite like this in my life, and that's pretty great. See, I told you I like electronic music. This next song wasn't an all-timer when I started writing this video. I don't know what I was thinking. It so obviously belongs here.
When you're weary.
So I've mentioned before that I was raised Catholic, and I want to elaborate that this was a pretty strict upbringing. Like, I went to church every Sunday of my life until I moved away at 19 strict. But anyway, I went through a lot of stages back then, where my identity as a Catholic fluctuated from strong allegiance to confusion, and then back again. Until one day I realized that I was actually just so miserable every day and left it all behind. But what does that have to do with this song at all? Well, I'll clarify that above all else, I always really liked the church music. Those powerful emotional hymns with magnificent chord progressions sung by those greatly devoted choir folk. I still enjoy a little gospel music to this day even.
Like a bridge over troubled water.
And I re-experienced a lot of these similar feelings when I listened to Bridge Over Troubled Water. I mean, true, Paul Simon was literally inspired by a classical spiritual composing the song, and you can fully hear it in the soulful piano backing and wide, gorgeous melody. It's ridiculous to think that this song never existed before 1970. It just has that certain all-encompassing enormity that feels like it's been around for 1,000 years.
When evening falls so hard, I will comfort you.
It's an unusual song for Simon and Garfunkel in a number of ways, not the least due to its multi-layered production and blatant sentimentality not often found in Simon's songwriting. In addition to this, Art Garfunkel takes lead vocals, and dear lord, is he just perfect. So gentle and kind, like a dear friend sending a message of support to that who he cares for the most. When darkness comes your way, he'll be the light to help you out. He will be there for you, but not in the God way where he expects something tangible in return. It's unconditional, truly, honestly, purely loving.
Sail on, silver girl. Sail on.
And I could not talk about the song without paying mention to that magnificent final third, where the pianos are accompanied by fuller instrumentation, more unique percussive turns, and look at that, Simon is here too, melding with Garfunkel's voice to give us some of their signature harmonies. And this just sells it all. I don't think I could put this rapturous feeling into words. It truly is just that beautiful. It's very likely one of the closest things to a religious experience I could get in any song, without all that religious stuff. It's kind of amazing, yeah. Yeehaw, y'all! Hell yeah, it's goddamn Knights of Sidonia, y'all. I feel like a lot of emphasis is placed on Welcome to the Black Parade, as a choice cut that introduced the rock kids of the 2000s to more progressive material. This was always my tune of choice, however. Not to dampen the mood so immediately, but listening to Knights of Sidonia now makes me so bitterly nostalgic for the days Muse used to actually care about the work they made. Because you can definitely tell they cared about this one, in its bulky 6-minute length replete with tremendous melodies and fierce hooks aplenty. And it's also a fairly natural conclusion for Muse to have come at this point. They were always so great at building up their own unique kind of art rock with a harder, even theatrical edge. Here, it's a style filtered through a spaghetti western interior and space rock inflections, and it rules so hard. I've been wanting to make a video on Telstar by the Tornadoes for a little while now. I don't think this will be happening anymore, but this buzzy introductory guitar line directly rips from that composition and is a fair substitution for sure. And it transitions so smoothly through the rest of the song. The galloping drums, the shredding guitars, and the desert-infused horns, all as Matt Bellamy sings on a society unraveling at the seams and beckons us with the call to take the upper hand as we see fit. And boy does he ever.
No one's gonna take me alive.
I know a lot of y'all likely know the song as well as I do, but have you ever stepped back and examined just how insane it is? Particularly in its layering of these extravagant sounds and harmonies in ways like little else playing on the radio at the time. And of course, this chorus, which is shrieked into piercing falsetto all the way to high heavens. Seriously, who else could ever? And that final guitar solo just about seals the deal. It's not as complex as the rest of the song, but it is absolutely rich in texture and emotion, which, yeah, completes the cycle and turns this thing into something pretty darn special. It's also tight and focused in its absolute badassery. Not a single second here feels out of place, and each one of these seconds is packed to the brim with the most thrilling, heart-pounding energy. It's widely seen as Muse's masterpiece, and yeah, for damn good reason. Absolutely epic. More like, I got a personal all-timer feeling about this. Like and subscribe for more. Maybe it's been evident for a while, but for the past year or so, I've been getting really back into a lot of the emo and post-hardcore music I grew up with. I stupidly assumed that me being an adult meant I had to turn away from my past as an emo kid forever. But a couple of years ago, I had a flash of nostalgia and revisited a ton of songs I used to love in my colored hair, dark eyeliner past, and as it turns out, A Decade Under the Influence is one I've held closest to my heart, even all these years later. I've talked about Taking Back Sunday here before, and yeah, they're one of the best for sure. Sharp hooks, big emotions, and heady instrumentation to soundtrack it all. This song, moreover, is their masterpiece for simply having all these pieces in order, turning the energy of each up to 11, and making a gripping as hell song out of it all. Also, the layered vocals. More bands should have multiple vocalists, plain and simple. I I just cannot get enough of the back and forth movement of the lyrics and the dynamic it creates from this. I found nowadays that so many of my favorite songs are ones that take a simple motif and beat it into the ground until it becomes meshed into its environment, warped and shifted as said environment sees fit. I've Got a Bad Feeling About This is given as a spare hook, one simply repeated after every other line. But as the song progresses, this singular line takes on a whole different weight, as feelings of anger and insecurity grow all that more stronger over time. Simply speaking, the song is about a relationship on the rocks, which, yeah, if you're a young person undergoing their first breakup, such turmoil could seem like the absolute end of the world. And I don't know, it kind of rules that we have music that captures such fresh, frankly immature emotions as potently as this does. On that note, I'm so glad I've re-embraced being an emo. It just makes so much more sense to stand on the side of empathy instead of sneering at these big, untethered personal expressions just because it seems irrational or whatever. We were all dumb kids once. No use pretending you never were. But anyway, yeah, I gotta emphasize that this song just has the best ending ever. An absolute tidal wave of anguish, spiraling emotions, all culminating in one final prolonged scream that cements this song as one of the biggest, truest anthems of its generation.
I got it bad! I got it bad!
Emo kids for life, y'all. And this is one I absolutely cannot justify putting this high, but I don't care. I'm having fun, so why stop now? That right there is the sound of my childhood. Those tinny melodic keys set atop that bouncy percussion and strung along by a singer with the voice of an angel. While discovering Britney Spears was an important milestone for getting me into pop music, little did I know that the seeds were already well planted at that point. And trust me, y'all, the enormity of this track in particular is absolutely immeasurable. One thing that cannot be understated is how much of a man's world the genre of cumbia was in the early 90s. The regional Mexican scene today very much continues to be, but it was especially so back then. And when Selena broke onto the scene with her unique take on the genre, one that melds these traditional stylings with some incredibly catchy pop hooks that drill right into your skull, man, the amount of power there is incalculable. As such, Como la Flor is long considered her signature song, and that rules. I really love the way that she moves along this instrumental, her voice given just that much stage time as the bubbly keys dancing behind her. The vibes are just so good with this one, and she absolutely dominates this like no other. But that's not what I'm placing at number 2 here. This is what I'm placing at number 2. Jesus fucking Christ. Watching Selena's final concert at the Houston Astrodome is a hell of an experience in and of itself, but this prolonged new age style intro to Como la Flor, unique to the song's live versions, is something else entirely. Any musician could only dream of suspending an entire arena in this kind of delicious tension as she does here. It gives me all the goosebumps. And personally speaking, I think this live version is where we get the most emotional resonance out of her words. Because as fun as the song is on the surface, it's actually about intense heartache, the fresh pain from cutting ties with the one you care about, and then watching them move on while you're still regaining your composure. She's utterly destroyed by this breakup, the end of a relationship she cherished like a beautiful flower, until this very flower wilted and faded away. And yet, yeah, the tune is an absolute bop, which makes it a whole message of resilience itself. It might currently feel like the end of the world for her, but there is always light at the end of the darkness, and there will be a time where she can dance and learn to love again. And you can hear it for yourself in all dimensions of her captivating live performance. Or maybe you're still partial to the professional studio recording, which, fair enough, it's still pretty darn great. But at the end of the day, she was one of the greatest pop stars of all time, performing here at the utmost peak of her abilities, and we were so lucky to have her for the time that we did. I mean, what else was I gonna put here? It's in the damn title.
No, I know that I can make you stay, but
Emo kids for life and all that. Anyway, this is it. The best song My Chemical Romance ever put out. The absolute peak of their emotional and compositional strengths, all rolled into one of the most gripping, life-affirming songs of the entire aughts. Yeah, this was always going to be my number one. No debate to be had there. Famous Last Words is, fittingly, the final song off the Black Parade, directly following Disenchanted, which I reviewed last time, and it's actually really enlightening to observe both of these side by side. Where Disenchanted had that brazen power ballad bombast in the face of the speaker's impending death, Famous Last Words is, well, still bombastic, but not quite as brazen. I mean, yes, the guitar riffs are thick and powerful, and Gerard Way continues to command his presence so assertively, all of this is for certain. Then again, it's less of a theatrical strut, and more of an obligation. There's no turning back now, so what choice do we have but to face our fate with eyes upturned toward that which awaits us? And yet, this is also where the song brilliantly transcends its message past the literal text of the speaker's destiny. Because death, for the living, could mean a lot of things. The closure of a door, the end of a relationship, the first step toward finally making that huge change you never thought you could. And the song helps recognize that it is possible to continue living after these metaphorical endings. And on a more personal note, it's one of those songs that helps me reflect on my own life struggles, health problems, loss of loved ones, those moments where I look around for help and seem to find nothing but the endless void of darkness all around, with nothing to grab onto to ease me forward. And as such, a line like, "I am not afraid to keep on living," has meant more and more to me by the day.
awake and unafraid, asleep or dead.
It's a reminder that admitting defeat is not an option. To get through this world, we all must be loud and wild. Project our voices for all to hear, even if it's scary, even if it seems hopeless. Because with darkness, there's always light. That's what this song means for me, at least. A tremendous power stance in the face of all that ails us. It's no wonder why it's resonated for so many through the years. And I'm sure high school Liz in particular would be very, very proud. As always, thank you so much for sticking around with me. Take care, and I'll see you all next time.